Chapter 401. Explorers from Another Realm. Yuan was surprised. Elder Qin had said that the 10 Directions Island domain might be a main thoroughfare connecting many great domains. This was based on his experience. There were many rampage lockdown zones in the 10 Directions Island domain, whose formation usually resulted from the spatial conflicts and folds between two realms, forming a not-so-small probability of passages leading to other great domains. Otherwise, the ends of a great domain were typically boundless, bottomless, filled with the annihilating winds of the Wuji abyss, or towering towards the heavens, permeated with terrible pressure and the destructive thunder of the Tianqian mountain range. For the former, any legendary realm creature venturing into it would surely not return. The latter was also not safe either. Without locating a passage within the mountain range, even a creature of legendary realm could hardly cross the Tianqian. These two are the more common barriers at the edge of a great domain, but not the only ones. There could also be a great sea surging upwards, or waterfalls adjoining the high heaven. Or a grey mist acting as a barrier, swallowing every figure that steps into it. Or space shattered and fragmented, with the sky and earth disappearing bit by bit, like a puzzle falling apart as one proceeds. Like the rampage lockdown zone, it is also a kind of scene that may exist at the edge of a great domain. Such a scene doesn't necessarily imply adjacency to other great domains. It's just a possibility. Tianyuan City had already started to explore with great effort, but surprisingly, before they could discover anything, explorers from an outer realm had crossed the sea and arrived. Moreover, these explorers seemed to be living beings. This meant that the adjacent great domain might be habitable. At least, it couldn't be the Red Mist land. Yuan didn't need to give further instructions, as the clever June swiftly and stealthily followed them. It knew this was a chance to make a great contribution. An extremely rare opportunity. Its chances to earn merits were becoming fewer by the day. Although it was the first to arrive, the Zanjun Flight Corps couldn't take on two difficult tasks. Seeing the chance for merit right before its eyes, how could Lord June hesitate? It was a falcon meant to soar above the heavens. No mere outer realm explorer will vanish from the sharp gaze of Lord June. Discover hidden stories at. An hour later. June had still lost them. A whole azure-colored great bird lay despondently on drifting clouds, letting the wind brush against its cheeks. It had no face to return to its own kind. Yuan didn't blame it. After all, the outer realm explorers were evading the attacking monstrous legend, and in such circumstances, they would use all kinds of anti-tracking methods. Apart from being a bit faster, having sharper eyesight, a keener sense of smell, and the ability to hear the wind's voice, June didn't really have any strong tracking methods. Perhaps we could equip June and the others from Wings of the Wind King with a powerful tracking method? Some sort of skill or artifact. Yuan pondered. Still, such methods weren't easy to come by. After all, only sufficiently advanced and high-level methods could be effective against creatures of legendary realm. Although June had lost track, it had still managed to determine a rough area. Yuan walked to the huge map of the 10 Directions Island domain hanging on the side of his office and circled a red ring over a certain sea area in the east. There's a good chance that the passage to the outer realm is in this area. Yuan immediately convened an online meeting. Deadbone has entered. Duolai has entered. Rakshasa has entered. We must focus on exploring this area and find the passage in the shortest time possible. Deadbone spoke. He was an old pioneer. However, Yuan was well aware of the unspoken concerns of Deadbone. It must be thinking, the eastern sea area is too close to Tianyuan City, and it's unclear whether the great domain opposite is friend or foe. Without thorough investigation, Bone's heart cannot be at ease. Indeed, living beings are not necessarily allies. Are there few examples of countries' clandestine skirmishes, sabotage, and killings? There are even cases of strong nations swallowing weaker ones openly. Not every lord has noble morals like Lord Shepherd. General Duolai was very supportive. I want to go on a big adventure too. At this time, Deadbone was in the North Domain, investigating the northern frenzied area's situation and gathering intelligence on the two overlord powers there, the Black Crow clan and Orokai clan. And Duolai? It was overseeing the number 3 minefield. Not because this minefield was so important that it needed the presence of a great heaven and earth realm entity like Duolai, but because the minefield was at the center of all major mining areas. If any other minefield, or those managed by the Fire Lions, Cat People, Feathermen, sent a distress signal, Duolai could immediately rush to help. Otherwise, even General Duolai, flying from Tianyuan City to several faraway minefields, would take too long. Let alone the forces of the cat people, feathermen, but even his own mining areas, Skeleton Lord, Fearless War Handsome, Lord Han Chuang, and other powerful entities, may not be able to last long under a premeditated attack by the enemy. With mining operations inevitably came the need to allocate a considerable force of Legend Realm entities to sit in stewardship. Currently, the number of legends stationed elsewhere was still too few, and Duo La's speed barely compensated for this deficit. Liu Lu and Ilo were holding down Tianyuan City. But Ilo was a civil officer. If a minefield to the south of Tianyuan City were attacked by a formidable enemy, it would have to rely on Liu Lu riding the wings of the Wind King to rush there quickly. Mu Yuan reassigned Rakshasa and Yuta, along with 2 exploration teams from the southern area, all to the east domain. 4 exploration teams, consisting of over 40 epic troops, began to investigate the east domain. Deadbone also rushed over from the north domain. It was also looking for traces of the monster power that had battled with explorers from the legendary realm not long ago. 1 day. 2 days. 3 days. Mu Yuan stayed inside Tianyuan City, either replying to documents, communicating with the distant battle armor general, heading to the secret realm to have fun, gathering intelligence, or selecting personnel to go to Panchi City Academy and Tian City Academy. Suddenly, a chime rang through the psychic channel. It was Duo Lai contacting him directly. Found it, found it. The passage to the outer domain. A few seconds later, Deputy Jasmine walked in and said, Lord, an urgent message has just come in. Of course, it was the information about the passage to the outer domain. Mu Yuan walked out of the city lord's mansion, sending a communication into the distance. After a while, screech! A majestic azure divine bird descended from the high sky. Its speed was extremely fast but didn't stir up a gale. Instead, the winds of heaven and earth seemed to cooperate with it, at its beck and call. It was like the king of wind. Lord, your trump card mount, June, has arrived. Mu Yuan stepped into the air and mounted the broad back of June. The azure divine bird immediately spread its wings and soared to the heavens in the blink of an eye. Fast. Incredibly fast. And throughout the entire flight, there was no gust of wind assaulting him, making Mu Yuan feel as stable as if he were standing on solid ground. Actually, had the great lord of the legendary realm truly flown at full strength, he would undoubtedly have been faster than June, but who would want to fly on their own when there was a mount available? The eastern end was not far from Tianyuan City. June flew for just over an hour and reached the sea area. Here, only a few hundred kilometers away from the land, one could see some scattered desolate isles. The tide rose, the tide fell, that seemed normal. But further forward, storms surged, with tornadoes reaching the azure sky above and sucking up the sea below, standing amidst heaven and earth, sweeping and tearing apart everything they touched. June dared not proceed any further upon reaching this area. Mu Yuan slightly expanded his domain, extending his senses and feelers to discover that the elemental particles between heaven and earth were particularly ferocious. If the command over heaven and earth particles by someone from the legendary realm were 100 under normal circumstances, then in this frenzied area, it would be less than 10. It greatly reduced his combat power. The legendary realm's power to command the forces of heaven and earth is extremely powerful, akin to a god compared to those at leader level, but its shortcomings are equally evident. Mu Yuan collected his thoughts. Stay connected with. Duo Lai was flying out of the storm, holding an urn-shaped treasure in its hand. Invisible spatial barriers fell downwards. Though invisible, under the buffeting of the surrounding tides and storms, one could faintly discern a huge upside-down urn shape. Following Duo Lai, Mu Yuan walked inside. All the violent energy tides around were isolated outside. There was no sound, no wind or waves, with only the world outside visible to the naked eye, as if the person had been stripped out of the world. We're here. Duo Lai said. In front of them, the violent water columns of the tornadoes had surprisingly calmed down a bit. Dead bones stood tall in mid-air. Above was a pedestal cast from white bones, surrounded by dense black clouds that couldn't be dispersed. Here, among the division general level powerhouses other than Rakshasa and Yuta, there was also Sophia, who had rushed over not long before. And the legendary channel that leads to the outer domain. Mu Yuan did not need to ask, he recognized it at a glance. Even though this channel was completely different from those at the southern and northern ends. Whirlpool. In this relatively calm area surrounded by water tornadoes, a huge whirlpool spanning thousands of kilometers in diameter lay across. At the center of the great whirlpool, one could vaguely make out another world. But it was unclear, like a reflection in a well. Dead Bone spoke, "We've already tried, this whirlpool has been navigated through, but what the conditions are like on the other side remains unknown." Saying that, Dead Bone summoned a vampire from within its holy mountain, with blood-colored wings unfurled. This was a 4-order peak vampire earl. Apart from not being a living being and forever incapable of budding intelligence, it was not much different from a real vampire earl. It turned into a blood arrow, directly flying toward the center of the great whirlpool. Sizzle! Sizzle! The water flow whipped up by the great whirlpool sliced like blades, cutting through the vampire earl's body. Blood splattered, vicious wounds appeared and healed again. Count Vampire eventually flew into the center of the whirlpool and entered through the leak. The resistance here, the danger, was also not as great as the water dragon outside. Yuan nodded slightly and began to form the first team for the exploration of foreign realms. After all, it was the first time, and being cautious was of the utmost importance. He called out his troops, Dead Bone, Duo Lai, Sophia, Yuta, June. It also included 2 fearless war commanders, 2 skeleton lords, and 2 ghost commanders of the underworld. As well as himself. A total of 12 personnel. Of course, only his avatar went with them, he brought the avatar with him, too. If his real body had traveled across domains, Dead Bone would probably cast a gaze that would make him sweat profusely. Afterward, Duo Lai first transported the others out of the water dragon's frenzied area. Then, the 12 members, shrouded in the space urn, slowly probed into the great whirlpool. They descended into the center of the whirlpool, passing through it. They came out from. Did we just emerge from below? The 12 flew midair, with a giant spatial whirlpool underneath them. However, around them, there were hundreds, thousands of whirlpools, extending from their field of view all the way to the horizon. At the same time, within a large city in the Shenluo domain, a lord paced back and forth. You encountered a sniper attack by legendary realm monsters just as you entered the great domain. Yes, Lord. Retreating early was the right move. The Lord mused, the great domain opposite Whirlpool Sea is not Red Mist Land, but it seems to be a great domain that has been under monster power for a long time, which could be troublesome. Such a domain indeed has quite a few resources, but they are difficult to exploit. What he worried about more was that the bordering domain next to Red Mist Land might be a bridgehead for a top-tier monster power. If that was the case, when war broke out, his jewel city would become the front line against the monster overlord. By then, forget about making money, exploring, or seeking opportunities. One careless move might even cost him his territory. This had happened before. Lords more powerful than him had explored foreign realms, only to be targeted by top overlords, and now the weeds growing on the ruins of their domain stand several meters high. But no matter what, discovering the passage early was definitely better than being caught off guard when a crisis arrived. Reorganize the scouts for reconnaissance. If the danger is not significant, we can enter. If the crisis is high, we also have to prepare early. At the same time, over 1,000 kilometers away from Jewel City, inside another large city, a certain lord had just received information transmitted by his intelligence agents. Gemstone Duke has discovered a passage to a foreign realm? He's found a new great domain. Unacceptable. How can we let Gemstone Duke have all the great opportunities to himself? Find out. Within 3 days, I want all the information on the new foreign realm. In the new great domain, June flew at a third of his full speed at a low altitude. They flew over a region filled with whirlpools and storms, heading straight for a distant continent. Distant mountains stretched endlessly, and forests were lush and thriving. Indeed, as he had expected, this was a domain with a viable living environment. However, there are fewer monsters than I imagined, Deadbone spoke. The experienced creature immediately grabbed onto the key point. After a while, Sophia also summarized the intelligence gathered by the Black Crows from various places. Indeed, there aren't many monsters, and I've found quite a few traces of civilization, she reported. A few hours later, Yuan had completed the exploration of the nearby area. He had formed a preliminary outline of this great domain in his mind. It was a great domain with a master. Moreover, this domain's level of development was quite advanced, at least in this region. With this, shall we continue our exploration and adventure? Duo Lai asked. Yuan replied, of course, at first glance, it seems there's no opportunity to be unearthed here, but in reality, there is greater value to be found. Their own 10 Directions Island domain was far from fully explored, with the vast majority still shrouded in mystery. If this great domain was also unexplored, Tianyuan City truly lacked the capacity to explore and develop it. But if this domain was prosperous, home to many vitality forces, he could gain more benefits through trade and exchange. There was just one precondition. Chapter 402, The Surprise of the Gemstone Grand Duke. The plains were expansive, the mountains continuous. One settlement and village after another were scattered in their midst. Some of these towns didn't even have high and majestic walls. The wooden walls built by many villages and the wooden spikes and traps laid outside seemed like they could only fend off fierce beasts or monsters of apprentice level. Yuan himself had never seen a town without walls. Shilling City, Panchi City, each city's walls competed in height. It is said that in the territory of Tian City, there were ordinary small towns and villages that spread around the city just like the villages and towns of Langxing's era, simply and ordinarily. People didn't live within fortress-like territories, instead, towns and villages branched out, which at least meant that monster waves didn't affect these areas. Even further, this great domain was likely controlled by some great nation-level force, or, at the very least, had a great nation-level force as its backing. Otherwise, even if far from the Red Mist Land, the low-danger domain couldn't avoid numerous conflicts. Yuan pondered. The priority was to figure out the name of this great domain and which power it belonged to. Deadbone pondered. Being near a great nation-level force meant having formidable power, which meant their own safety factor was decreasing, which also meant they were already in danger. No, they had to make some preparations first. Duo Lai was deep in thought. Traveling to the outer lands, could they perhaps encounter some uniquely flavored delicacies? Organize an exploratory team that appears official to visit the local lord. After pondering for a while, Yuan spoke. They themselves would naturally continue to hide in the shadows and watch and observe. He wasn't as worried as Deadbone. Surviving in the eternal world didn't just require personal strength, but also background and connections, at least in the civilized world. The bigger the force, the more they adhered to the rules on the surface. He wasn't just a wild small-time lord without backing, he was the lord of Taishan. By revealing his identity, he was unlikely to face direct attacks. As for dangers that lurk in the shadows? When had there been no danger? Wasn't exploration always accompanied by danger? Having a backing was enough to dissipate the majority of potential avarice. This was sufficient. Yuan's group slowly made their way deeper into the Shen Luo domain and found a secluded valley to set up camp. They would rest and wait here for the time being. The official team continued to move through densely populated areas. Meanwhile, intelligence gathering in secrecy was ongoing. The towns and villages weren't as numerous as imagined, but were clustered in areas with vast uninhabited lands in between. Even so, even these desolate lands rarely saw monsters. Large ferocious beasts were even rarer. Many areas bore the footprints of humans. 2 days later, this temporary camp had been fortified with 49 traps and defenses by General Deadbone. This way, if we encounter danger, we'll have a bit of capacity to fight back. Deadbone nodded slightly. Yuan fell silent for a moment. With General Deadbone here, he truly felt very secure. At that moment, Sophia approached. Lord, we have now clarified the basic situation of this great domain and current territory. The reason it took so long was because she only resorted to mild methods. That was what the Lord had ordered. Otherwise, she could have been much faster indeed. Yuan took the intelligence report Sophia handed over and glanced at it. Shen Luo domain, if I remember correctly, Shen Luo domain is the territory of the local powerful force Star Luo Holy Palace, right? Yes, more precisely, it is the territory of a vassal force under Star Luo Holy Palace, Sophia said. This great nation-level powerhouse alliance force comprises numerous kingdoms, duchies, and scattered territories revolving around the Holy Palace as their core institution. They worship ancient gods. It is said that the power of Star Luo Holy Palace is second only to the Holy Griffin Empire, and their influence isn't much less compared to the Griffin Empire, either. Yuan nodded slightly. He had also seen the documents about Star Luo Holy Palace. This stack of documents was what he had given to Sophia. The core of Star Luo Holy Palace was located in the Starfall realm, a mysterious great domain. Only a very limited number of outsiders, elite figures, have the qualifications to be invited to the Starfall realm. As for other great domains, Star Luo Holy Palace would only establish one or a few sub-palaces there and would barely interfere with the management and operation of various countries and territories. The good news was, Star Luo Holy Palace had quite a good reputation. As long as one didn't breach their taboos, the people of Star Luo Holy Palace were usually not difficult to deal with. Reputation is not always entirely reliable, but it has some credibility. Just like how the Yongxing Empire was viewed as aggressive and domineering by outsiders, based on the behavior of many lords of Yongxing abroad. Sophia continued. The first place we passed through was a small frontier town called West Border Town. Although it is on the frontier, as westward there's nothing but the Whirlpool Sea, West Border Town is not really a border town but just a typical small town. As I found out, the border town of Shenluo Domain should be somewhere very far north from here. There lies the real wilderness. If we head northeast from here, there's a small city called Redstone City. Its lord is the immediate superior to the lord of West Border Town. At the same time, Redstone City is a vassal territory to the overriding local power, the Gemstone Duchy. There are several other vassal territories like Redstone City. Gemstone Duchy. Mu Yuan's gaze grew sharp. The gap between duchies was immense. Duchies within major power factions were the true Grand Duchies. Just like their Taishan alliance. Within the alliance, only a handful of powers dared to call themselves duchies, like the formidable Lord Biting in the northern border of the Taishan alliance. Lord Biting's combat power might not necessarily surpass that of the renowned powerhouses like the Lord of Hanyu City or Sword Lord Liashi, but in terms of the overall scale and the number of strong warriors, Biting Duchy could leave Hanyu City 30 streets behind. A duchy was just that formidable. Sophia's mouth twitched slightly. Boss, you might be misunderstanding, it's a different national situation. Moreover, the Gemstone Duchy isn't an internal power of the Holy Palace, it's still just a vassal to the Holy Palace, one of the numerous large and small forces surrounding the Star Luo Holy Palace. The Gemstone Duchy is one of the more powerful ones among these peripheral forces. Based on my investigation these past few days, the Gemstone Duchy openly has 6 legendary realm warriors, known as the 6 Gems of the Gemstone Nation. A few days ago, one of these 6 legendary realm warriors led an exploratory team into our 10 Directions Island domain. 6 legendary warriors, terrifying indeed. Wait, just 6 legendary ones? One day later, Mu Yuan met with the Grand Duke in Redstone City, a vassal power of the Gemstone Duchy. Not quite accurate. He didn't show up in person. Deadbone said it was not prudent, even if it was just an avatar, it shouldn't be exposed to dangerous situations lightly. Therefore, Deadbone took on the task, leading 2 Lords of Death remains and 2 Ghost Commanders of the Underworld, plus a bunch of undead beings to bolster their presence, and they made their way to Redstone City. The Gemstone Grand Duke, he didn't show his face either. After all, he was the ruler of the Grand Duchy, a top-notch character on this great plane. However, he was paying close attention. He even came to Redstone City himself and sent one of the 6 gems, the Shadow Knight known as Obsidian, to receive this group. The City Lord of Redstone didn't understand. The Gemstone Grand Duke snorted but didn't speak. Why bother with just any ordinary external exploratory team? But if this team was from the new great domain across the Whirlpool Sea, that would be quite something. Firstly, to pass through the Whirlpool Sea and the Stormy Sea domain on the other side, at least one legendary realm warrior was needed to lead. A power with a legendary realm warrior couldn't be simply deemed a small force. Secondly, on the other side of the great domain, there might be a considerable number of legendary realm monsters. It was a dangerous great domain. However, it's not yet certain whether they are from the great domain across the sea, he thought. If they are. Thus he sent the legendary realm Shadow Knight to probe slightly. The 2 groups met. The Gemstone Grand Duke observed the visitors from afar through the eyes of the Shadow Knight. Undead troops? That's quite rare. Is the one leading them their lord? The undead beings were surrounded by an abundance of death and shadow energy, which couldn't escape the eyes of the Shadow Knight. But the one clad in silver-grey armor, cloaked in a black cape billowing in the wind, the Shadow Knight couldn't see through him, not in the slightest. Through the gaps in the helmet, one could faintly discern a pair of eyes faintly glowing with a pale golden light, majestic, noble, indifferent, and utterly inscrutable. They were the eyes of a king. Crack! The line of sight connection that the Gemstone Grand Duke had with his Shadow Knight, through some kind of artifact, suddenly got cut off. No, it wasn't cut off. The Shadow Knight didn't dare to continue the deep gaze. The Gemstone Grand Duke even faintly felt that his own Shadow Knight was trembling. It was the kind of tremble a subject might feel in the presence of a king, the overwhelming urge to kneel. Illusions, surely. What a joke. The Gemstone Grand Duke was still unclear if the team that claimed to have come from Yuan City was from across the Whirlpool Sea. But in the face of power, the truth didn't seem so important anymore. With equivalent power and each having their own backers, a foundation for cooperation was there. The Gemstone Grand Duke had already vetoed the plan to expand into the outer domains. The domain across was unsafe. And a lord from Taishan had already taken the lead. At such a time, rather than competing with the lord of Taishan, fighting for territory, it was better to step back and catch a ride with the lord of Taishan. Maybe the earnings were a little less, but it was safe and risk-free. In his middle age, he understood deeply that stability was most important. He had reached the peak of his own strength, and earning more or less was all about nurturing the next generation. That being the case, he couldn't afford to take risks. A gamble might leave him with nothing. A surefire deal was what he favored. For Mu Yuan, his initial goal had been achieved. Firstly, by cooperating with the Gemstone Duchy, he could use it as a base point to continuously open up trade routes in the Shenluo domain. Their 10 Directions Island domain was rich in iron ore, but neither Shilling City nor Panshi City could consume it incessantly. The Eastern Sea route was even shorter, making it easier for the caravans to travel back and forth. The Gemstone Duchy also had its own specialties, producing various elemental spheres, rare, and elemental fragments, common. And elemental spheres were commonly used materials for constructing miracle buildings or manufacturing high-order warfare artifacts. The preliminary cooperation was settled. As for deeper cooperation, that would require both parties to be more familiar with each other. Mu Yuan's original purpose was only to get a clear picture of the situation in the Great Domain on the other side. In Redstone City, the Gemstone Grand Duke lit a cigarette and stood by the window, pondering. By his side, a Shadow Knight from the legendary realm stood motionless like an obsidian statue. Across the Whirlpool Sea, in the Great Domain, we're not planning on exploring, but we still need to thoroughly scout out the situation, and you will be responsible for this, he said. The Shadow Knight had a group of excellent scouts at his disposal. He was not planning on developing the domain across the sea, but if reconnaissance revealed some extremely precious opportunities or treasures, he could change his mind at any time. The Shadow Knight asked, "Lord, what about the Gunner Master from Ironstone Mountain? Are we still recruiting? More and more lords are heading to Ironstone Mountain these days." The Gemstone Grand Duke waved his hand dismissively, "No more recruitment. By the look of the Gunner Master, he's not the kind of person we can recruit. Let's not waste any more energy on him." Of course, he had tried. He personally visited twice, even offering extremely generous terms, but the Gunner Master rejected them without much thought. With that, the Gemstone Grand Duke had given up and no longer entertained the thought of trying. He could not possibly offer better conditions. For one, the conditions he had offered were already exceedingly high. Secondly, if he offered more, how would his own veterans feel? Let the other lords compete for him, he declared. I estimate that all their competing, will likely lead to nothing. Ironstone Mountain, originally just an insignificant hill, had become famous ever since a Gunner Master hero settled there. More and more lords or high-ranking professionals traveled thousands of miles to arrive here. Thanks to the peaceful environment of the Shenluo domain, even second-order elite-level professionals could cross thousands of miles in teams. Of course, because the Shenluo domain is a country with many forces and does not have the convenient steel train like the Taishan Alliance, the lords or professionals who could travel thousands of miles at this time mostly had flying mounts. That day, a magnificent cyan bird, commanding the winds of the heavens, arrived at this place. Descending from it were Sophia and Duo Lai. Half of Duo Lai. Duo Lai's half-body followed Sophia. The human girl-shaped body. The other half stayed in the temporary camp. The big slime body. But even half Duo Lai possessed strength surpassing that of ordinary legends. Is this where that some sort of wild hero is located? Duo Lai looked around curiously. Sophia, yes, right here on this mountain, is a Gunner Master. She had accidentally learned of the Gunner Master of Ironstone Mountain while gathering information. She was well aware that a Gunner Master meant little for their own lord. However, Sophia also knew that the gunner master's epic profession required a high level of craftsmanship and technical proficiency, and their lord had once lamented not having such an adept in their ranks. Consequently, during her investigation, Sophia made a point to look into the information of this gunner master. She discovered that he possessed exceedingly skillful firearms modification techniques. The lords and professionals arriving here were not all intent on recruiting the master. Some, realizing they had no hope of recruitment, settled for the next best thing, asking the master to modify their firearms. The gunner master, in turn, made some money from this. A gunner master with technical expertise was indeed worth the trip. Therefore, she volunteered and found herself a task. Yuan, upon hearing of this, even lent her half duolai. Mature creatures indeed find their own work, resolving issues for the lord that the lord hasn't even thought of yet, he remarked. Chapter 403, Your Lord is the illegitimate son of the god of guns. When Sophia arrived at Ironstone Mountain, teams after teams were already gathered at the foot of the mountain, creating a lively scene. However, the only path leading up the mountain was blocked. A general clad in armor stood leaning on his sword, and beside him, two golden colossus statues, each over 10 meters tall and gilded all over, stood like door guards on either side. Ironstone Mountain had been blockaded by a lord. According to the international treaties, this opportunity should belong to our Star Luo Holy Palace, but our Lord is merciful and has given you all a chance. As long as you can withstand these two gold colossi for 3 minutes, you may proceed up the mountain. Of course, if any of you can produce the Medal of Honor of the Star Luo Holy Palace, I naturally won't obstruct you. At first hearing, what the general said seemed to make sense. Indeed, there are such international treaties. This place broadly falls within the territory of the Star Luo Holy Palace. But wild heroes are living beings, not opportunities that belong to someone. What's more, the blockade was not organized by the Star Luo Holy Palace but was a personal act by Duke Gold. The Star Luo Holy Palace's Medal of Honor is an extremely precious token, only possessed by lords who have made significant contributions to the palace. What does this have to do with whether one is from the Star Luo Holy Palace or not? Many minor lords had long since claimed to be Star Luo people. Even though they are, in fact, just peripheral forces affiliated with the Star Luo Holy Palace, including the Golden Commonwealth. Recruitment, after all, depends not only on strength but also on fate and compatibility. If they can meet that gunner master, they will also have the chance to win a hero's loyalty, albeit a tiny chance. It's still better than being dismissed before even starting. Many lords and professionals were angry but dared not speak out. They were not strong enough. Both of the gold colossus statues were top-tier fighters at the 4th order peak. How many could last 3 minutes against them? Nevertheless, there were some lords and the followers of lords who passed by from the side while the general and the gold colossi did not even attempt to stop them. These lords either had strong backers within the Holy Palace, or their stature was no less than that of Duke Gold, or they had really fought and demonstrated strength not much weaker than that of the gold colossi. Duke Gold is quite crafty. Sophia sneered. Duolai's big eyes were clear but foolish. How is that crafty? But it was Duolai the elder, and it could not bring itself to ask. Suddenly, Duolai sensed a gaze directly upon it from not far away. It looked over. It was a tall woman wearing a dark green felt hat, with a long gun on each side of her waist, and it seemed like she carried some large firearm on her back. This person looked vaguely familiar? Duolai pondered. The girl with the muskets approached and inquired tentatively, "Are you from Tianyuan territory?" Duolai's eyes widened. "How did you know?" The girl continued, "I thought so, General Duolai, long time no see. I didn't expect to encounter you here." Duolai kept staring. Damn it, who is this woman? Ah, it remembered, she was someone they had seen during the competition at the Dragon Courtyard. Her name was, what was it? Damn it, suddenly it couldn't remember again. Apart from its siblings in its own territory and delicious food, it indeed filtered out most other things quite quickly. Even Duolai felt a bit embarrassed at this moment. "Lord Shenmao, greetings." Sophia greeted with an elegant noble gesture. It was then that Duolai finally remembered, "Oh right, it's Lord Cat." It seemed to recall having helped Lord Cat with a small favor in the Forest of Terror. "Hello, hello." Lord Shenmao was very sociable. Or rather, she was already quite familiar with General Duolai. She first saw Duolai's grace at the festival grounds. Later on, they had a few encounters, and during the competition at the Dragon Court, it was Duo Lai who saved her life. She had a very profound impression of Duo Lai. She wasn't sure at first, as she truly did not expect to encounter someone from Tianyuan territory here. This place was far from the Taishan alliance, and she wouldn't have come to such a distant place if it weren't for official duties. How has your lord been recently? Well fed and in good spirits. Duo Lai mused. Lord Shen Mao. Well, it seemed like there were no issues. She had heard that Tianyuan territory was in dire straits, but seeing that the Tianyuan family's top general Duo Lai could appear here, it must mean that everything had resolved. You're also here to recruit the gunner master, aren't you? You too? Yes, I've been here for 3 days, and I have met with the gunner master hero. He truly is a capable person, said Lord Shen Mao, but recruiting him is quite difficult. The Gemstone Grand Duke and Duke Gold have hit a wall several times. I've given up on that idea and now just want the gunner master to craft some firearms for me. You've just arrived, haven't you? Duke Gold has sealed off Ironstone Mountain, making it a bit troublesome to go up. Thinking of this, Lord Shen Mao walked toward the general in charge of the blockade, spoke to him, but ultimately returned with a distressed expression. Duke Gold showed her no courtesy. She was a promising new lord of Xin from the Taishan alliance and was not intimidated by legendary figures like Duke Gold. But naturally, as a great lord with many cities and towns under his command, he could afford not to give her any courtesy. If not for her connections in the Shen Luo domain, she might not even have had the chance to speak with the legendary general in the distance. After all, she was not yet legendary. She looked at Duo Lai. She was not worried that Duo Lai couldn't defeat the 2 gold colossus statues. The question was how to fight them. Duo Lai looked at Sophia, its eyes signaling, should I just throw a fireball and smash these 2 guys? Sophia hurriedly responded with a look, no. Don't even think about it. One fireball from Duo Lai and the entire Ironstone Mountain was likely to be leveled. Since we've come to the Shen Luo domain, let's follow the rules of the Shen Luo domain. It's just 2 iron dummies after all. Sophia said. She was ready to take action herself. At that moment, June by her side called out, asserting its presence. Meanwhile, in the distance. Boom! A 15-meter-tall gold colossus statue, wielding a giant halberd, stirred up a tsunami-like storm surge, knocking a fierce flame-flying dragon hundreds of meters away. The fierce flame-flying dragon tumbled to the ground, its feathers broken, its flesh a bloody blur, a sight of sheer misery. Initially, many lords sent their strong men to fight for a chance. By now, the number of strong men daring to challenge the gold colossus statues had dwindled. Defeat was a minor matter. But an accidental serious injury, especially one that caused fundamental harm difficult to heal, was a major concern. When June stepped forward, pairs of eyes turned its way. A flying combatant? Using aerial tactics to stall for time is indeed good. However, merely being able to fly is far from enough to last 3 minutes in the hands of these 2 gold colossus statues. Commented a lord. June disdainfully shook its head. Who was it? It was the old general from Tianyuan City, the leader of the Flying Brigade, the divine bird who mastered the storm, Lord June. It could easily deal with these 2 iron dummies without even having to fly high, let alone with both wings bound. It was Lord June with an epic 3 stars authority after all. Skill, Sigh of the Wind God. Description, under Jun's control, the force of the wind has conceptual killing powers like cutting and annihilating. A simple, brutal god-level killing skill. June could now only unleash a fraction of the Sigh of the Wind God's power, yet even so, the Sigh of the Wind God's terror still made June tremble, forcing it to use the skill carefully for fear of accidentally losing its life. Today, it wanted to give it a try. Of course, it wouldn't use its full power, but these 2 huge iron dummies should be able to withstand a bit, right? The battle started quickly. June whipped up a violent and fierce cyan storm, the entire world seemed to turn azure, engulfed by the endless tempest. The 2 gold colossus statues, though massive, couldn't move an inch under the storm's embrace. From their bodies came a grating, ear-piercing sound of being slashed. The next moment. Boom! The cyan storm dispersed. And the 2 gold colossus statues were already lying on the ground. Everything below their knees had vanished without leaving a trace. This, hiss. What kind of skill is that? Isn't that too overpowered? Aren't the gold colossus statues known for their defense? Exclaimed a lord in shock. Including Lord Shen Mao. June retracted its wings slightly and looked towards Duolai and Sophia. It seemed to have caused a bit of an overreaction. Could this cause trouble? In the distance, the legendary realm strongman from the Golden Commonwealth responsible for sealing the mountain had a somewhat dark expression. His piercing gaze was fixed on June. An indescribable oppressive force bore down on them. Lord Shen Mao came back to her senses, staring at the legendary realm figure from the Golden Commonwealth, and said, "Injuries are inevitable in a contest, that's the rule you set yourself." But before she could finish speaking, Duolai stepped forward. With each step it took, the world around buzzed, and multicolored elemental particles interwove, resonating. A powerful oppressive force surged forward, like an avalanche or a tsunami. Could this be legendary? Lord Shen Mao's eyes widened, and she clenched a grass stalk in her hand. In the end, of course, nothing happened. The rules had been set by Duke Gold himself, and the Gold Colossus statues had previously injured many challengers severely. Duke Gold had to abide by the rules, he couldn't bend them to his will. Of course, if this squad only had a 4-order peak strongman in charge, the Golden Commonwealth's legendary realm wouldn't hesitate to teach this bird a lesson. But, this squad was led by someone from the legendary realm. This legendary realm being also brought with him indescribable pressure. Then, there was nothing to worry about. Sophia and the others followed Lord Shen Mao up to Ironstone Mountain, heading straight for the workshop of Gunner Master Roy. Damn it, how many times have I said it? How many times? I don't follow any lord, and if someone wants to make firearms, fine, but don't bother me with anything else. Mr. Roy, we can provide you with high-level legendary cultivation manuals and even find rare medicines and treasures to heal foundational injuries. Don't you want these? Don't you want to go further and reach higher realms? You can have a higher future. No, don't disturb my business. Next. A lord dressed in a golden robe struggled to keep his composure. He still maintained his expression, not exploding into a tirade. If he did, wouldn't he be pushing the opportunity to recruit this epic hero toward other lords? I'll endure. He coldly glanced at Shen Mao and the arriving group that included Duolai. He didn't speak, nor did he walk away, he just stood there at a distance. Gunner Master Roy didn't even lift his head as he asked, "What kind of firearm do you want to make?" Sophia replied, "It's not about making weapons, we have another request." Damn! Roy was about to roar in frustration, but Sophia anticipated his outburst and quickly said, "It's not about recruitment. I'm asking on behalf of our Lord, would Mr. Roy consider taking the position of an instructor to teach some necessary skills and firearms modification skills to gunners?" She glanced around, "We can also send apprentices here." Damn! Well, that's not entirely impossible. Roy's tone gradually softened, and after a moment of thought he said, "It's a deal, but you've got to pay, and also work as my assistants. And, I won't teach with patients, if they can't take it, they'd better pack up and leave." Sophia agreed, "It's settled." A few days later. By this time, Yuan had already dined with Lord Shen Mao and led his team back to his own territory. Meanwhile, Sophia and Duolai headed back up Ironstone Mountain again, leading a team. They brought a few apprentices. The ranks of these apprentices were either first order peak or second order. Courtesy of Yuan utilizing the baptism opportunities granted by heaven and earth previously. Because they needed to learn a trade, they tried to match as closely as possible to the master gunner in their ranks. Yuan picked several musketeers who showed promise in learning and training, giving them the baptism of evolution ahead of time. Besides gunpowder, another gunner master was born. Additionally, there were 4 gunnery experts. These are 3 stars level excellence troops, evolved from Royal Musketeers and Dual Gun Rangers. In total, 6 people, all from the Cannon series profession. Presumably, they must have great compatibility with Gunner Master Roy, and the efficiency of their learning should be outstanding. Yuan paid, and these apprentices were decent free labor, so Roy was quite polite to Sophia and the others, at least not grimacing. "So these are the 6 fellas, hey?" "Yes, they are all firearms professionals, and they seem well outfitted." Roy could see the naivety in these few, labeled as gunpowder. All greenhorns. However, his brows suddenly knitted, and his eyes slowly focused on gunpowder and another person. He, a gunner master. No one understood the gunner master better than he. But his experience and intuition couldn't help but determine that the 2 young people in front of him were both gunner masters, right? The others seemed like gunnery experts. Where did so many high-order cannon series professionals come from? He looked towards Sophia for confirmation, careful to ensure accuracy. Sophia didn't deny, she said, "Our Lord said to entrust these few, including gunpowder, to the care of Master Roy." "That's no problem." Roy added, "I will teach them well, seriously." All 6 possessed ranks either as gunnery experts or gunner masters. They were truly top-tier seeds born to learn firearms. He felt a fondness for talent. Just that. How did their lord come by so many elite ranks in the cannon series? Surely he couldn't be the illegitimate child of the god of firearms? In the distance, Duke Gold, who often climbed up Ironstone Mountain, saw this scene and couldn't help pondering. Could it be that sending apprentices to Gunner Master Roy is the correct way to forge a closer relationship? It seemed like he got the idea, as a slight smile formed on his lips. He instructed his subordinates. "Go, find 300 apprentices for Duke Gold." Chapter 404, Tianyuan 6 Legends. Tianyuan Territory. Sophia and Duolai have already returned, leaving only Gunpowder and 5 others to continue their apprenticeship on Ironstone Mountain. The levels of the 6 are indeed not high, with Gunpowder being the strongest but only just entering the 2nd order elite level. However, they are gunner masters, experts in gunnery, which, with the exception of Roy, the others on the mountain are unaware of, simply regarding them as apprentices who came to learn the craft. Now, there are more than just Gunpowder and the 5 others apprenticing on Ironstone Mountain. Seeing this, a few lords sent over some apprentices overnight. It's said that a lord even brought over 300 apprentices, only to be turned away by Gunner Master Roy with a darkened face. Thanks to the backgrounds of Gunpowder and the others, Gunner Master Roy seems to take them quite seriously. They should be able to learn a lot of skills and quickly make up for their own shortcomings. With Gunner Master Roy, who is at the legendary realm, stationed at Ironstone Mountain, Gunpowder and the others should be safe as long as they do not leave the mountain. While this was said, if conditions permitted, Yuan would have dispatched a legendary realm powerhouse to be stationed at Ironstone Mountain. After all, Gunpowder and the others were too green. They had already developed self-awareness, and when it came to learning about gunnery, they were leagues ahead of the other apprentices, but in terms of adaptability and quick thinking, they were quite naive. Yuan's father expressed concerns. But currently, Tianyuan territory did not have the resources to regularly dispatch legendary realm powerhouses elsewhere. He could only send several 4th-order epic young generals to be stationed at Ironstone Mountain and establish Tianyuan's own base in the Shenluo domain, creating a liaison with the Gemstone Duchy. He was still too weak. Not long after returning from the Shenluo domain, to the east of Tianyuan City in the semi-mystic realm of Treeman Forest, the tides of heaven and earth suddenly surged, and brilliant rays of wool soared into the sky. The entire Treeman Forest swayed and buzzed. This was Tree Demon Granny making a breakthrough. The spectacle of its breakthrough was even more exaggerated than Dead Bones and Duo Lass. Yuan was not surprised. When Duo Lai was at the 4th order limit, it contained 100 times more energy than a regular 4th order limit creature. But the energy contained by Tree Demon Granny at this stage was even more. After all, Tree Demon Granny's roots were deep in the forest soil, and the vast surrounding forest became a part of its reserves. Notification: your troop Tree Demon Granny has entered the legendary realm and is currently undergoing transformation. In the core territory of Treeman Forest, the huge body of Lord Treeman grew larger and larger, as if an ancient tree reaching into the heavens, stretching across the vast woods. Even the surrounding trees were influenced by Tree Demon Granny's breakthrough. The towering trees nearby, as well as the Lord Treeman and War Tree men guarding it, were visibly growing taller. The entire semi-mystic realm of Treeman Forest seemed to be expanding further and further out. This was not as evident. Tree Demon Granny's size, after entering the legendary realm, was still insufficient compared to the vast Treeman Forest. My Tianyuan territory has given birth to a new legendary realm. Yuan was very pleased. At this time, other lords would probably be throwing lavish parties to celebrate their legendary promotions, inviting dear friends, business partners, and neighboring lords to show off their freshly minted legend rise. It would also demonstrate their formidable strength. For Yuan, such a display wasn't necessary, a small celebration with his own people would suffice. They didn't need a promotion party to prove their worth. He would rather keep things hidden, to surprise the monster overlords at a critical moment. Otherwise, what if they scared the monster overlords away? Duo Lai, Dead Bone, Ilo, Mr. Mew, Lu, Tree Demon Granny. Tianyuan territory now had 6 legendary realm powerhouses. Shouldn't such power be considered reasonable among regional dominating forces? Many well-known great lords have only a few famous legendary experts under their command. But that's just the number on the surface. Like my Tianyuan territory, which only publicly admits to having 2 great legendary realm powerhouses, Duolai and Lulu. The actual number is a ratio of 1 to 3 compared to the public number. Mu Yuan felt this ratio was reasonable. No, the ratio was still a bit low, 1 to 6, or even 1 to 10, would be closer to the truth. The territory was still not strong enough, they needed to continue working hard. With the birth of a new legendary realm, naturally came the responsibilities of being legendary. Mu Yuan had plans for Tree Demon Granny, one of which was to handle the defense of the territory. Being a rooted troop type, Lord Treeman was inherently better at defending its homeland. However, Tree Demon Granny's responsibilities were different from Lulu's. Lulu was the commander-in-chief of the Visible Defense Forces, in charge of all territorial defense duties. Tree Demon Granny, beyond commanding the Treeman troops, did not lead other troop types. Its responsibility lay in the dark, or rather, beneath the territory. Subterranean defense had always been a headache for Mu Yuan. In battles like the Lord Trial and Red Fog Disaster Moon Siege defense, he had suffered from neglecting this aspect. He had already fortified the land of Tianyuan territory, thanks to the powers of the Earth Element series troops and the epic-level Colossal Rock Dragon Turtle. These measures could defend against minor creatures but not against real powerhouses. Usually, only enchantments could provide all-around defense. Now that Tree Demon Granny had stepped into the legendary realm and controlled a Treeman troop that could extend its roots beneath the entire Tianyuan city, he gave Tree Demon Granny a task: to build an underground root defense network. In this way, whether enemies attempted to infiltrate or force their way in, they would directly enter the net of roots. And here, this was the absolute home ground of the Treeman troops, where they could unleash a power far stronger than when they had raised the All-Woods realm outside Tianyuan city. The second task was to mount an offensive. Specifically, a defensive offensive against the Great Blood Tree Forest to the west. The Great Blood Tree Forest was too close to Tianyuan city, a mere few dozen kilometers away if marked by the blood-colored trees. Of course, these areas were the outer limits of the Great Blood Tree Forest, just as the periphery of the Dark Forest was right next door to the Tianyuan territory back then. But still, it was too close. Back in the day, he was just a shrimp and didn't understand the terrors of the Dark Forest, but now he had to take precautions early. However, delving too deep into the Blood Tree Forest was too dangerous, so what to do? Fight the forest with the forest. Rooted powerhouses excelled in home territory combat and possessed the ability to extend their own domain. Then, let the Tree Demon Granny turn the forests west of Tianyuan city into her home ground. That was her second task. The Tree Demon Granny had an epic skill called Seed of Tree. According to her, once she had stepped into the legendary realm, the seeds of the Seed of Tree could take root permanently in the earth. In that case, one tree held 2 great responsibilities, which seemed reasonable. Ilo was doing the work of 13 people all by herself. Mu Yuan felt the spirit of Ilo was worth learning from. At the same time, deep within the Great Blood Tree Forest, Gaga. A blackbird with a beak curved like a knife flew 1,000 meters high, staring levelly at the towering blood-colored giant tree that pierced the clouds. Bloody mist surrounded it, and on the tree trunk, numerous blood eyes opened. This was the true form of the Blood Tree King. It is indeed terrifying. If the Blood Tree King hadn't given permission, I would never have been able to come here. Is he really of the legendary Earth realm? The blackbird was shocked but kept a calm appearance, its eyes deep. Blood Tree King, have you considered the offer? Human forces are growing stronger, and you no longer have the luxury of staying out of this. Work with us, and together we can eliminate humankind. The entire Great Domain will be our hunting ground. I can make the decision to cede 1/3 of the original fang of the Jackal Wolf domain to your Great Blood Tree Forest. The Blood Tree King remained silent. After a long silence, this king does not care whether I step out of the Blood Tree Forest or not, nor do I care for the meaningless human blood fodder. But if he truly didn't care and had no intention of talking, he wouldn't have come to this core area of the Blood Tree Forest. The blackbird muttered under its breath. He said nothing, only taking out a heart core shining with magnificent luster from his storage ring. This is a Millennium Tree Heart, a treasure left by a fallen legendarily realm tree person. Regardless of whether your highness takes action, this Millennium Tree Heart is offered to you. However, if your highness agrees to act, the Black Crow clan and Orakai clan are also willing to gift you 3 additional Millennium Tree Hearts after the fact. The Blood Tree King still remained silent. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of eyes on the trunk stared intently at the giant black bird. After a moment, this king agrees. A blood vine descended, gently wrapping around and taking the magnificent Millennium Tree Heart into the Blood Tree King's grasp, merging it into his trunk. What would you have this king do? Human powerhouses are not easy to deal with, and some have abilities that restrain this king. But that is external conflict. Only human strong men can match your highness. If it's inside the Blood Tree Forest, with the great force of your highness, suppressing human powerhouses should be effortlessly within reach. Humph, naturally. In that case, the envoy of the Black Crow clan proposed a great strategic plan. The Blood Tree Forest expansion strategy. If the Blood Tree Forest continued to spread, reaching the outskirts of Tianyuan City, what then for the human strong men? Should they step into the Great Blood Tree Forest, they would be usurping home ground advantage. If they dared not enter the Blood Tree Forest, they could use it to constantly harass and wear down humans. When the time came to truly lay siege, they could neutralize the geographic advantage of the humans with the forest's environment. Perfect. The fang of the jackal wolf failed due to underestimating their opponents and a lack of understanding of humans. And now, they had gradually come to understand clearly the various facets of human power. The fang of the jackal wolf had already stumbled through those pitfalls. They just needed to wait for the right moment to strike. They would win. Yuan naturally had no way of knowing the situation within the Great Blood Tree Forest. The entire forest was a place of absolute death. It was difficult for any creature, strong or otherwise, as well as monster powerhouses, to set foot in it. The fact that a new legendary realm had emerged in the Tianyuan territory was also little known, with only a few high-ranking members of Tianyuan territory being privy to the information. However, in the past 2 days, the birth of a new legendary realm swept through the circles of beings in the 10 Directions Island domain in a matter of moments. There was no concealment. The newly born legend came from the Natural Garden. With the promotion of this legend, the Natural Garden held a promotion ceremony of considerable scale and invited Lord Yuan, the battle armor general, the giant legendary King of Frost, and other dignitaries, including the Cat Person, the Fire Lion, the Multi-Armed, and the Feet Herman forces, which now also had a presence in the outside world and were naturally among the invited. The Natural Garden's promotion ceremony was a grand affair. After all, before the birth of this legendary realm, the Natural Garden had only Milena, a solitary legend, who had to shoulder everything and sometimes dared not linger in Tianyuan City. Now, with the second legendary realm in the Natural Garden, there was much more leeway in strategic arrangements. The Natural Garden has passed the critical period, while I still have to struggle on. When I return, I must make our youngsters in Giant Stone Ridge train even harder, much harder. The giant legendary King of Frost sighed. 2 younger giants, who might have the potential to sprint towards the legendary realm in the future, couldn't help but shiver. People could die from this. Luckily, no 4-order geniuses from Tianyuan territory had broken through, otherwise. Giant Stone Ridge naturally had its own legendary seed and had been preparing for the breakthrough into the legendary realm. It was just that this legendary seed was still adjusting and did not have enough confidence to begin the breakthrough. We owe it to the city lord of Tianyuan for our sufficiency of breakthrough ceremony materials, otherwise, Giant Stone Ridge wouldn't have enough. Now, everything is starting to look up. The King of Frost saw a bright future. With this development, Giant Stone Ridge had a great chance of giving birth to a 2nd, 3rd, 4th and even a 5th legend. But there was a prerequisite to all this. Peace and smooth sailing. Could they really develop smoothly? The surrounding monster overlords seemed to be plotting something. The King of Frost was worried. He opened his mouth but chose not to voice his ominous concerns on this joyous occasion. The promotion ceremony in the Natural Garden was grand, yet didn't last very long. This elven force had continued the tradition of ancient ceremonies but developed their own efficient style. Even now, the 10 Directions Island domain couldn't be considered peaceful and harmonious. A celebration? A brief festivity was fine. Afterwards, right back to business as usual, back to their stations. Now was not the time to relax. It was at this time that Daisy's commercial expedition to the Twilight Plains territory returned. When they had set out, their squad had only a single X-type passenger airship. Upon their return, the airship fleet had expanded to 4 vessels. Dragonfish 2 Passenger Airship, Excellence. This was a vehicle Yuan exchanged for using contribution points on the Taixuan Covenant platform. These were large items that could not be transferred through the secret realm, necessitating either collection in person or dispatch via courier. Unfortunately, nothing like Divine Bird Express or the Netherworld Express could reach Tianyuan City, situated in the 10 Directions Island domain. Picking them up in person was the better option. The Dragonfish 2 passenger airship was a Taishan self-developed airship whose performance was comparable to the X-type, to Yuan's satisfaction. 4 airships, 2 for commerce, and the remaining 2 for daily personnel transport, Yuan contemplated. Daisy then reported on the situation of this commercial trip in detail. The primary mission of this commercial expedition was to establish trade routes and build connections with various territories and cities. Thus, they traveled to many places. They moved southward through various settlements, passing through places like Shiling City, ultimately reaching Panchi City. Despite this, the revenue from the commercial trip was still substantial. Most importantly, they had opened new channels. Like for the Dragonfish airships, if he hadn't gone to fetch them himself, Yuan wouldn't have been able to acquire them. We also acquired this treasure, Daisy said. The blueprint for the domain interferer you ordered was out of stock. It'll take about a month or 2 to procure, but based on your needs, boss, we've purchased this set of treasures. The Boundary Steel. Chapter 405, Gifts from the Monster Overlord. Boundary Steel. Yuan had always valued enchantment-related treasures and had long thought about purchasing a set of real city defense barriers. However, a city defense barrier that could engulf an entire city would undoubtedly be of epic level, and as a large item, its value would be at least equivalent to several treasures of the same rank. There were indeed such items on the Taixuan Covenant platform. A total of 3 sets. Water Veilska Cloak Barrier, 10,000 Wood Sustenance Barrier, and Red Lotus Karma Fire Barrier. The first 2 required 6-star pioneers, or authority equivalent to this rank to exchange, while the latter could only be purchased by 7-star exploration generals. Yuan did not have this authority. He didn't even have the financial means. He had given up on the idea of exchanging for city defense barriers and instead turned to developing lower-grade substitutes himself, or waiting for the day he would be favored by the elements of heaven and earth and such a treasure would simply drop into his lap. He commissioned Daisy to purchase domain interferers or similar treasures for the purpose of concealing extraordinary phenomena. To conceal the phenomena emanating from the birth of a being with legendary status. He worried that one domain interferer wouldn't be enough, so he considered buying another. Boundary Steel. Rank, Excellence. Category, Special Class Combined Treasure. Description, place the steel on the ground, connect it to the ley lines and supply enough energy to unfold an enchantment measuring 2000 times 2000 times 2000 cubic meters. Description, the special enchantment provides medium protection, as well as strong concealment, masking, and interference capabilities. Also, deploying the enchantment does not affect the people inside from absorbing elements of heaven and earth from the outside. Description, once the Boundary Steel is activated, it will inevitably be subjected to wear and tear. The current number of remaining uses for this Boundary Steel, 3/5. The Boundary Steel was acquired by Daisy in Panchi City, from the hands of a high-order professional. The acquisition was not expensive, it only cost 700 soul crystal coins. So cheap. Yuan's insight had greatly improved, he could determine the approximate value of this combined treasure at a glance. Even with limitations on the number of uses, the value of an enchantment treasure was still far higher than ordinary treasures of excellence. Moreover, a coverage area of 2000 times 2000 times 2000 meters was by no means small. It was enough to completely encompass a small town-level territory. 700 soul crystal coins was indeed cheap. Such treasures, under normal circumstances, are also difficult to purchase with only soul crystals. Daisy said, "This Boundary Steel is somewhat underwhelming, the protection it provides isn't very strong, and the energy consumed to maintain the barrier over a long period is beyond what an ordinary lord can afford. As for concealment, masking, interfering with astral observations or deductions, these abilities seemed hardly useful. They only took effect when the barrier was active. What territory would need such a thing? Though that's what was said, this was still an item that could save one's life, and acquiring it for 700 soul crystal coins showcased Daisy's capabilities. The entire process didn't require Mr. Mew to worry at all. Having competent subordinates made life easy for a lord. Rest for a few days and then head to Shenluo domain to the east on behalf of our Tianyuan territory. This trip is a short one. Afterwards, continue to expand the trade routes to various places in Taixuan. On this trip, you'll also take Irene and the others with you, taking them to the academies in Panchi City and Lake Haven City, Mu Yuan arranged. The personnel headed to Panchi City and Lake Haven City had already been essentially selected. The accompanying personnel and guards for the merchant convoy would also undergo some rotation. Experienced hands would lead the new ones, making sure that as many Tianyuan up-and-comers had the ability to stand on their own. For example, this trip's guard captain Zhou Yi, Mu Yuan considered assigning him to Lake Haven City. The offertory-level experts in the guard team, Xi Lu and Lian Yu, with Lian Yu continuing to accompany the merchant convoy back and forth, providing escort and protection. Xi Lu, on the other hand, would stay behind to focus on honing his physique and adjusting his state to make a push for the legendary realm. After all, Xi Lu had already encompassed both domain and light of will, just half a step away from the legendary realm, while Lian Yu had yet to forge his own domain. No need to rest, said Daisy, time is life, time is money. If every trip requires a few days of rest, when will we be able to have Tianyuan City's trade routes spread across all of Taixuan? Besides, staying in the territory doing nothing wasn't as enjoyable as haggling with others, where a simple 3 sentences could net 180,000 soul sand. She, Daisy, had ambition as well. Currently, the Chamber of Commerce in Tianyuan territory was still a rather unremarkable department among the many. Just as she had expressed, she wished to see the reach of Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce penetrate the entire Taixuan region. The Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce was preparing for the next commercial journey, scheduled to depart in 2 days. Various departments of Tianyuan territory and each troop were also busy. Outside South City, Ilo stood on a high platform, lecturing and instructing. One new building after another rose from the ground, and the appearance of the area outside Tianyuan City changed day by day. The previous layout of Tianyuan City was gourd-shaped, and now, 2 new districts were gradually being constructed at the bottom of the gourd, one on each side. Once the 2 new districts were completed, they would be able to accommodate a permanent population of about 65,000. Some territory citizens were still living a bit cramped. Building their own apartments, the territory citizens were full of enthusiasm. The Skeleton Cemetery, Ice Spirit Cold Pool, Royal Musket Association, Treeman Forest, and the Dragon Mound Fertile Land Secret Realm and other areas were also bustling with construction. Comfortable residences would also be built in these military camp areas. The defensive troops, meanwhile, continued their in-depth work on the territory's defenses. As the new district was under construction, these areas had already moved beyond the protection of the city walls. General Liu Lu pushed the defensive troops forward, stationing them in one fortress after another as they were built. General Liu Lu also frequently measured the land and chose areas that were easy to defend but hard to attack, erecting arrow towers and multi-shot arrow towers, gradually building up a series of defensive strongholds around Tianyuan City. Night fell. Liu Lu took out the military books purchased by the merchant caravan, many of which recorded the defensive layouts of various lords and generals for their own territories. Liu Lu meticulously read through them, not missing a single word or sentence. There is no trivial matter in the security of city defenses. At the same time, out in the wilderness, exploratory teams and transportation teams were also active. It was now deep into the night, the sky pitch black without moonlight or starlight, as if countless ferocious monsters lay in wait within the dark wilds, yearning to devour humans. The wilderness at night was dangerous. However, for the majority of Tianyuan City's elite who had already stepped into the Third Order, they could move around the wilds at night as they pleased. Deadbone did not advocate exploring at night. The elite needed rest, and so did the undead. It's just that some work had a time-sensitive nature and had to be done as quickly as possible, racing against time. The 04 transport squad led by Skeleton Lord Bone 44 was performing a task that required urgency. Quick, quick, quick! The Soul Shrine is just ahead. In the darkness of the night, strands of faint blue and yellow light floated around. Bone 44 led his squad of over 10 men, quickly arriving at the camp. He manifested the Death Remains territory, laying it upon the earth. To the side, several team members hurriedly ran in, throwing out 20 or 30 monster carcasses in various manners. All these monsters were thoroughly dead, many of the corpses incomplete. Yet even in their incompleteness, one could vaguely make out the ferocity and brutality they had in life. These were all high-order monsters. Also, they were monsters that had a not insignificant possibility of possessing some intelligence. The 04 squad had just received news of the goods and immediately rushed there, transporting these cadavers to the Soul Shrine with the utmost speed. We took just over 2 hours, these bodies should still be fresh. In charge of this camp was also a military unit born from the undead. Ghost Commander of the Underworld, Bai Li. An epic strongman in the late Fourth Order. Bai Li quickly moved the goods into the Soul Shrine and chose to perform the sacrifice. Soon, the carcasses dissipated, specks of pale blue light scattered, and eventually gathered again on the altar inside the shrine, forming a cluster of eerily blue flames. We've accumulated 30 points of soul power. This time, according to the list, it's time to choose a treant remnant soul for exchange. Nowadays, the exchanges mostly consisted of treemen, elite musketeers, and ice spirits. Occasionally, a batch of random one-star soldiers would also be exchanged. Bai Li didn't really understand these matters, he was only responsible for guarding this place and acting as an unfeeling execution machine. He just did whatever the Rakshasa boss told him. Bai Li was about to proceed as per the protocol. Suddenly, rumble. A tremor shook the ground as deep rifts cracked open in the earth of the campsite, kicking up dust and debris. The miracle building, the Soul Shrine, remained undamaged, still glowing faintly in the night. But around it, many wooden walls had cracked, and arrow towers too burst open with eye-catching fissures, ready to collapse. Bai Li was stunned for half a second before he let out a piercing shriek. Enemy attack! Invisible ripples spread all around. In the darkness, pair after pair of pitch-black pupils appeared. They were the Fourth Order strongmen from the Black Crow clan and Orokai clan, along with a large number of high-order monsters they had summoned. They had launched a surprise attack. At the same time, in the office of Yuan City, Lord Shepherd was still working late at night. The alert of an attack on his territory resounded in his ear, and he switched to the Lord's perspective at once, leaping to the location of the Soul Shrine. There, a rare level watchtower also stood towering before the shrine. Through the Lord's overhead view, Yuan could clearly see hundreds of Third and Fourth Order monsters charging furiously from outside the camp. The enemies have found their way to the Soul Shrine here. Yuan didn't immediately direct Bai Li and the others, nor did he control the arrow towers and multi-shot arrow towers within range. He just watched quietly. The Shrine's guards and the 04 transportation squad, these elites who typically acted under the leadership of Deadbone, Lu, Rakshasa, and other division generals, had never encountered such an unexpected situation. Now they were a bit dazed, a bit stunned, a bit at a loss. Their response was not as correct as it should be. Yuan was still calm, not in a hurry. The enemies had shattered the encircling walls and stormed into the camp, vastly outnumbering the defending forces with over 100 high-order monsters. The leaders among them were direct lineage Fourth Order from the Black Crow clan and the Orokai clan. They were commanders of formidable strength. They quickly seized the advantage. They toppled watchtower after watchtower, arrow tower after arrow tower, multi-shot arrow towers. They gradually cornered the undead like Bai Li and Bone 44 in front of the lookout towers. They sensed something was amiss, for after such prolonged combat, it seemed they had not achieved even a single kill count, while numerous high-level firepower lay fallen at their side. Bai Li and Bone 44, amidst the fighting, also felt that something wasn't quite right. There were at least 30 to 40 Fourth Order bosses on the other side, but the power they exhibited seemed a bit weak. Or rather, were they a bit too strong? Bai Li dared not underestimate these peak Fourth Order monsters. Just a short while ago, facing such monsters, he had been evenly matched. But upon reflection, he'd only been at Third Order peak then, and now, after undergoing a heaven and earth baptism, he had advanced to late Fourth Order. Most of his comrades had likewise stepped into the Fourth Order. They had nothing to fear anymore. Casting aside all reservations, Bai Li unleashed a vast ghost market illusion, which swiftly enveloped dozens of enemies around him. Countering dozens of peers single-handedly was unwise, as the ghost market might collapse within seconds. However, Chapter stay. The pressure doesn't seem that great. Bone 44 abandoned caution as well, condensing the Death Remains territory into a grinding mill of heaven and earth. It, as if lifting a massive millstone, smashed it directly upon the monsters trapped by the ghost market. Double kill. Triple kill. 8 kills in a row. This was why Yuan had no worries and did not need to command the battle. He wanted to provide his warriors with greater opportunities to temper themselves. Even if elites perished accidentally in battle, no matter, for they could be resurrected through the Hall of Martial Souls. There were no concerns for what lay behind. He looked toward the distant realms within his territory enshrouded in darkness. As the battle drew to its close, no legendary realm monsters had appeared. The commander-level strong ones sent by the Black Crow clan and the Orokai clan still held a bit of unwillingness in their eyes as they perished. Indeed, there was no legendary realm behind them. This place was too close to Tianyuan City. Once a legendary realm acted, the likelihood of escape was slim. Exchange a legendary realm for a crowd of human elites? That would be far too great a loss. But trading a bunch of high-order monsters for human elites is no loss at all, even at 2 for 1, 3 for 1, or 4 for 1. The elites of the Black Crow clan and the Orokai clan were clear, they too were just cannon fodder. But mere cannon fodder leaders. Yet, if they could capture the Soul Shrine and annihilate the human elites there and then scatter to flee, escaping from the hands of a human legend was not impossible. Humans have but 1 or 2 legends after all. The result? They died, and the Soul Shrine was not taken. Their final struggle to exchange life for life only barely managed to slay 2 elites from the human forces. A worthwhile trade or a loss? The Fourth Order leader of the Black Crow clan was unclear, he had already entered eternal rest. Bai Li, looking at this batch of entirely fresh corpses, felt completely invigorated. Quick, get all these monster corpses into the shrine. That night, the Soul Shrine wasn't the only place under attack. A total of 6 areas suffered surprise assaults from the enemy. Among them were mines guarded by the Cat Persons and the Feathermen. At this moment, within the Black Crow clan, several Black Crow legends were using special techniques to tally the night's casualties. The number of human elites we managed to slay seems somewhat low. No matter, as long as the number is not 0, it's enough. Continue the attrition. Pawns are just dispensable to us, but for the vitality forces to cultivate a 3rd order or 4th order strongman, it takes an enormous amount of time and energy, and they also need to consider aptitude. Keep wearing them down. That night, the Soul Shrine was continually in operation, harvesting batches of the freshest materials. Several corps replenished their ranks with many new soldiers. All these were gifts from the monster overlords. Chapter 406, The Legendary Gate. Lord, the losses have been tallied up. We suffered the deaths of 9 warriors in last night's battle, with an additional 47 injured. We lost 37 ordinary level defense structures and 16 rare level defense structures, totaling approximately. However, of the 9 fallen elites, 8 were of the undead system and did not need to be reshaped in the Hall of Martial Souls. Yuan simply made the rounds himself, inspecting the situation in the various mining areas while using undead revival to bring back the souls of the slain undead from the netherworld. The losses mainly occurred in a few areas that did not have division generals of T1 level from Tianyuan City to lead them. In the medium-sized soul sand mine furthest from Tianyuan City, thanks to the presence of Yuta and Serio, the damage was minimal even though there was an attack by legendary realm creatures. One reason was that the legendary realm creature kept its distance, attacking from afar without engaging in real combat. It seemed to have some recognition of Yuta. Secondly, Yuta and Serio are sufficiently strong. Whenever any elite in any area encountered an unexpected attack, they were able to rescue them in time. Places like the Soul Shrine encampment lacked division generals of T1 level from Tianyuan City. Bai Li and Bone 44 are stronger than leader level monsters, but not overwhelmingly so. They often couldn't rescue in time. They also lacked that level of awareness. However, after going through several battles, the abilities of these elites, their command capabilities, battle awareness, adaptability, and so on, would all rapidly improve. Yuan considered the enemy's attacks as a way to sharpen his own elites. Military kinds with budding wisdom can advance their intelligence faster through such trials, and only those truly self-aware can make real gains from such experiences. Chapter Find. Compared to the mines of Tianyuan City, it was actually the Feet Herman tribe and the Cat People tribe's mines that suffered more damage last night. One of the mines managed by the Feet Herman was even attacked by a legendary realm monster. But Duolas reinforcements arrived in time. Although both sites sustained significant damage and many elites were killed along with miners caught in the crossfire, the losses were still lower than what they had estimated. It was something they could bear. If we want to carve out more living space for ourselves, we can't avoid necessary sacrifices. Think about it, how many powerful beings from the monster power did we kill last night? We killed more high-order monsters in this one battle than we have over the past 10 years. A young, injured feet Herman warrior shouted hoarsely. What they were defending was not just a mining area, but the determination to expand and explore outward. The giant ridge and natural garden next door were also attacked at the same time, but they were not the main targets. Both powers conveyed messages that they were fine and asked if Yuan City needed support. The elves and giants need not worry. For monster overlord power, organizing an assault of this scale is not an easy task. After all, the number of high-order monsters that died last night ranged in the hundreds to thousands. Many high-order monsters are born directly from the red mist, emerging from the nest of filth. They are truly expendable, mere cannon fodder in the eyes of the legendary realm, but even monster overlords cannot continuously bring forth such large numbers of high-order monsters. In the short term, the enemy can only command ordinary monsters to carry out a war of attrition. Another point, among the legendary realm monsters that showed up last night, there were only a handful, but there are definitely far more in hiding or aiding and interfering from the shadows. A legendary realm being interfered with Ilo's astral observations. Another legendary realm used special methods to cover the raid teams as they crossed the wilderness. Otherwise, even with the vastness of the wilderness, Yuan City's intelligence network not yet fully deployed, and the lack of enough wild outposts and scout posts, even with these deficiencies, the enemy wouldn't be able to attack the outposts silently. We must be cautious with monster overlord power, and not drop our guard just because a minor power like Fang of the Jackal Wolf has been extinguished. Last night's battle also brought significant gains for Yuan. They harvested a number of ordinary level and rare level remnant souls. But these were just incidental. The main gains came from the Soul Shrine. The Soul Shrine can harvest the souls of freshly dead corpses and create one remnant soul after another. However, there are two limitations to the Soul Shrine. The corpse's predecessor must be a monster that had the dawn of wisdom. The corpse must not have been dead for too long. Through testing, Yuan found that the death time had to be within 3 hours. Beyond this limit, the soul points that the shrine could obtain would be significantly reduced. If it exceeded 6 hours, there would hardly be any energy to harvest. The battle of wolf felling spoils were simply wasted previously. The wolf fang lair was too far from the soul shrine, and by the time the bodies were transported, they were already cold. Last night's battle was different. The battle outside the Soul Shrine ensured all the corpses were fresh and could be directly thrown into the incineration shrine. The battles at various mines mostly weren't too far from Yuan City. For the mining areas closer to the northern territories, which were relatively distant, Yuan simply gave up on them. They truly did not have the capacity to keep them all. Choices had to be made. Last night we recruited 20 treemen, 10 elite musketeers, 10 ice spirits, and in addition, 6,000 other ordinary 1-star level creatures. In fact, in his opinion, creating random ordinary remnant souls at the Soul Shrine was the most cost-effective, especially after the evolutionary miracle upgrade. Before upgrading, he had to pay 3 times the price to specifically exchange for little skeletons or slime remnant souls. After upgrading, he had no taboos about diet, accepting any kind of remnant soul soldiers. Little goblin? Take it. Rotting walking corpse? Take it. Jungle caterpillar? Take it. Even the most useless types of soldiers could shine bright in Yuan City, contributing miraculous power. However, to amass 1,000-strong Treeman troops or Snow Maiden Corps, relying only on regular recruitment and recruitment orders, would take far too long. They still had to take some shortcuts through the Soul Shrine. The current Treeman troops already had several hundreds of trees. Although the Treeman troops already had the power to contest with, or even slay, beings of the legendary realm thanks to their rooting strength. After the evolutionary miracle upgrade, Yuan had no taboos about acquiring ordinary remnant souls, seemingly like the king of trash picking. He found it hard to buy large quantities of these cannon fodder level remnant souls at once, but a continuous stream of remnant souls were being added to the stockpile, and over time, the amount became rather considerable. Yuan opened the panel. Yuan territory. Rank, level 5 territory. Buildings. Troops, 84k, expand for details. Population, 32,455, PS, while checking data, I realized that the population figures in chapters 385 and 387 were incorrect and have been amended. The number of troops increased rapidly. However, accompanying this was a doubled pressure on the food supply. Nevertheless, this was Ilo's headache. As long as she could handle it, Yuan didn't need to worry. With the massive number of troops supporting him, a vast swarm of Evo points came flocking in, like droplets gathering to form a lake. In the pool that only Mu Yuan could see, the Evo power had already filled about 2/3. Evo power, 623k. Mu Yuan found that there was a limit to the amount of Evo power that could be accumulated in the pool. This limit was constantly growing as he continued to use the power of the evolutionary miracle. Initially, what he saw in his eyes as the materialization of the accumulated Evo power was just a tiny light ball. Later, the light ball grew a bit. After that, the light ball turned into a small pond. The pond grew to form a vast pool. In time, in his view, it would definitely become a gigantic lake of evolution. Currently, the limit of Evo power accumulation is about 1m. This means that a few months ago, even if I had not evolved any epic life forms and stubbornly hoarded, it would have been quite difficult to directly evolve to legendary. Now, the gates to legendary status seemed within reach. Only 500k Evo power was needed to progress from epic 3 stars to legendary. Only. It all seemed too easy. Mu Yuan called Ilo's channel and asked, "How is the ritual site setup going?" "It's all set up," Ilo said. "When Deadbone General evolves, we will fully power the domain interferer and boundary steel, and completely seal off the Dragon Mound Fertile Land secret realm. Besides, we will use large-scale magic like Night Hidden Starry Sky and other auxiliary measures. At that time, I will also fully power up the Epic Mage Tower, imposing a double seal on the Dragon Mound Fertile Land secret realm. Lord, when the time comes, you can also use the territorial power, which might provide some additional cover." They had prepared 3 to 4 main measures and more than a dozen auxiliary measures. Any of the main measures was enough to hide the phenomena that accompany the birth of an epic life. However, even so, Deadbone was still somewhat resistant to this evolution. "This is too unstable. What if we fail to lock down the phenomenon and attract the attention of a powerful being, what then?" The reasoning of Deadbone was not without merit. But the current situation of Tianyuan City was far from safe. He hadn't forgotten that Dragon Sleep Valley was right next to his own territory. The Northern Black Crow clan and the Orokai clan dared to launch attacks because they surely had their own reliance. Now, as Tianyuan City's legendary realm was about to enter a rapid growth stage, Mu Yuan wouldn't lack ordinary legends any longer. What he needed were higher, more invincible powers. Deadbone was, at that moment, among the strongest in Tianyuan, the most suitable for evolution. However, the matter of evolution did indeed need to be 100% robust, without even the slightest accident. This is why Mu Yuan had been delaying again and again. Otherwise, if he didn't evolve June, Sophia, or Yuta, he could have glimpsed legends a month earlier. Mu Yuan prepared various means and continuously searched for all kinds of information. Information about legendary life was extremely scarce. Ordinary lords and professionals might not have even heard of it, but for frontier lords, it wasn't completely inaccessible secrets. Epic life beings, as long as they excavate their own potential, so long as they do not meet an early demise, will leave a bold stroke in the annals of history. In ancient times, epic strongs had created principalities, kingdoms. Their lives were indeed the sagas of spectacular and vast epics. Even within the Bright Empire, a paramount great empire, the radiance of epic geniuses is never overshadowed. They are born dazzlingly radiant, with phenomena accompanying them, which signifies that even the heaven and earth favor such outstanding talents. The strength of a significant family within the Bright Empire depends on how many epic geniuses they have at a given time. If epic symbolizes history, then legend is an existence that is ethereal and revered. Epic strongs have their moments of glory, as well as their final curtains. The beings of legendary status often seem to permeate through the river of time. They rarely appear before people, yet they seem to exist everywhere, with many places bearing the traces left by legends. Many troops types, special bloodline lives, exist because of the influence of legendary beings, who gave birth to them. Many seemingly unrelated troops types, at the ends of their bloodlines, might also be pointing towards some legend. This was a popular science book. However, the description of legend within it was somewhat legendary itself. Mu Yuan read through many materials related to legends, which was still not enough. So, when he met the Lord of Hanyu City at the Elf's courtyard, he sought advice from him. "You've come to the right person for this. Legends are indeed quite mysterious, but not as mysterious as you think." "Have I seen a legend?" "Of course, I've seen legends, not just one. There are legendary life beings within our Taishan alliance, specifically where." "That, I cannot tell you, but when the time comes, you'll naturally find out. Which lords have recruited legendary troops? Ah, your question is a bit, never mind, you really don't understand the ins and outs. Epic life will no longer exist as remnant souls, unable to be traded. Lords who want to recruit epic troops could only rely on personal charisma, strength, or luck. At least, epic life might exist in the form of incomplete heroic spirits, or exist in certain recruitment spots, miracle buildings, waiting for those destined. But how about legendary life? Legendary life cannot be recruited, they will not submit to any lord. At least with our current power, it's impossible to attract a legend. The weakest legend I have seen had power that towered over my own. It's not possible to attract a legendary existence, but if we can gain the friendship of a legendary life being, we can ask this legend to take action when necessary. The Lord of Hanyu City spoke roundabout, but his meaning was still one and the same. Legendary beings were too powerful. Them, mere small fry, fantasizing about attracting legends? Impossible, not even in dreams. But the problem was, every life has its weak moments. When epic troops are just recruited, they aren't without second order, first order, or even apprentice level. But what about legendary life? Genuine powerhouses indeed couldn't be attracted. The legendary realm gunner Master Roy next door was supremely difficult to attract. Yuan didn't have that intention at all. But if Roy was only 4 order or even 3rd order, 2nd order, lords would find it significantly easier to recruit him. So he asked, epic troops show phenomena when they come into the world, but what about legends? If a legendary life were born and phenomena descended, wouldn't it attract countless powerful lords to rush over and recruit them? The Lord of Hanyu City said, the phenomena of a legend's birth are indeed extravagant, sometimes it's even visible across great domains, multiple great domains can see it. However, just like divine artifacts that obscure themselves, the birth of a legendary life will be celebrated by heaven and earth, with extraordinary scenes descending, but heaven and earth will also provide protection, cover up. Indeed, countless lords rush to the domains covered by the heavenly scenery, attempting to recruit such a newly born legend, hoping for instant success, but how possible is that? Impossible. Absolutely unattainable. She spoke as if between clenched teeth, like someone who had searched desperately for 10 days and nights and not even found a hair. Even if the phenomenon of a legend appears, in the end, it will still be like a mirage, visible, imaginative, but forever untouchable. This is a legend. Chapter 407, The Legendary Evolution. The Lord of Hanyu City is a top powerhouse of Taishan, and her insights and vision far surpass what little information can compare. After receiving information from the Lord of Hanyu City about the emergence of legends, Yuan felt much more at ease. Of course, relying solely on the word of the Lord of Hanyu City was still not quite foolproof. One day, Yuan also contacted Minister Qin to inquire about the secrets of legends. No one does not long for legends, and the Lord Tianyuan, who is young yet has already recruited several epic lives, naturally feels the same. Minister Qin is only at the level of legendary Earth Realm, and his combat power cannot compare with that of the Lord of Hanyu City, who is at the 3rd realm. But Minister Qin has been in charge of the Logistics Development Department for many years, and as one of the earliest lords of the Taishan Alliance, he has even broader knowledge than the Lord of Hanyu City. From Minister Qin, Yuan obtained a narrative nearly identical to that of the Lord of Hanyu City. The phenomenon of an epic life's birth, if not concealed, might be visible even from thousands of miles away. The phenomenon of a legendary life's birth, if not concealed, could be seen from several, perhaps more than 10, great domains, and certain powerhouses might even have a special premonition. However, even if the phenomenon is exaggerated and the heavens and earth celebrate with a radiant splendor that stretches 3,000 miles without end, powerhouses would still be unable to locate the newly born legend based on such phenomena. Legendary treasures have spirits, and only those with destiny can obtain them. Not to mention legendary lives. Who can find a legendary life that intends to hide and has the protection of heaven and earth? Even if encountered, how can one be sure that this is a young legend? A young legend does not necessarily mean weakness. Minister Qin said, when an epic life is just born, most are only at the apprentice level, but their initial rate of improvement is very fast, much faster than that of superior soldier species. As for what state a legendary life is in at birth, whether it is born at 4-order peak or even in the legendary realm, whether legendary lives never have a weak phase, these things, we do not know at all. The legendary lives active on the Eternal Continent cannot be said to be numerous, but without exception, these legendary lives reveal themselves already as top-tier powerhouses. Perhaps only an old established superpower like the Yongxing Empire, or even the Holy Griffin Empire, might have records of legendary lives in their youth. Legends are called legends because the tracks of most legends are very elusive. They wield great forces that exceed common understanding, and are as mysterious as people imagine. Not to mention professionals, let alone ordinary lords, even in the eyes of senior lords and some great lords, legendary lives are exceedingly mysterious, a rarity to witness in a lifetime. The vast majority of people's understanding of legends is also limited to just the word legend. In fact, even a top powerhouse like the Lord of Hanyu City couldn't necessarily recognize a legend if one stood right before them. Legends don't engrave the word on their foreheads. Among epic lives, only a few like giant dragons, angels, cyclops, and other species with distinct characteristics can be readily identified at a glance. For the likes of the Arrow of Polar Star, God Moon Elves, Vampire Marquis, Skeleton Lord, and others, whose physical characteristics are not particularly unusual, only those powerhouses with profound knowledge and familiarity with this epic can discern them. If this is the case with epics, all the more so with legends. There are few who dare say they are familiar with legends. Of course, there might be some legends with immense stature like mountains, where the land expands wherever they step. Should such beings appear, even ordinary lords would instantly feel that this is a legend. The legends mentioned by the Lord of Hanyu City and Elder Qin are all at the prime of their adulthood, fully actualized legends. Those who have left their legendary names and deeds, becoming famous in the world, are mostly these. Yuan withdrew his wandering thoughts. He had already obtained the answers he sought from both the Lord of Hanyu City and Minister Qin. The ascension into legend could proceed. Even if there was a chance the phenomenon of legend could not be concealed, Tianyuan City would not be exposed. The undead finally felt at ease. It began to adjust its state and listed dozens of skills that could be developed or improved. It had actually accumulated quite a few such development tasks, some aimed at broadening its own strike capabilities, some intended to be taught to its subordinate undead, some to enrich the facilities on Wraith Sacred Mountain. These tasks were not of very high importance, so the undead had simply been accumulating them, waiting to handle them one by one when it could spare the time. How could it miss an opportunity like the miracle baptism? It must fully utilize the remaining miracle power from this ascension into legend. It receiving one baptism was like squeezing hundreds of its brothers and sisters out of their baptisms. The undead could not let a single bit of power slip away. I also need to remember the process of evolution and organize the insights and experiences. After all, I am the first one to attempt a legendary evolution. The undead pondered. Just like breaking through to the legendary realm. It believed that making such a summary of experiences would allow those who evolved later to grasp the afterglow of the miracle power more accurately, maximizing the effects of the evolution baptism. Although, the summary of legendary insights it had previously made seemed to be not very effective. Many people said they could not understand it. The undead didn't quite understand it either. 1 + 1 = 2, from which one can deduce that the gathering speed of the elemental particles of heaven and earth is proportional to the ascending speed of one's own will rainbow light. What's there not to understand? The undead was adjusting its state. Yuan, Ilo were also preparing the ceremonial arrangements for the legendary evolution. Lord Shepherd even selected an auspicious time. However, none of these hindered the other operations of the territory. The reconnaissance corps continued their exploration and had already begun skirmishes with the minions of monster overlords in the wilderness. Traces of legendary monsters surfaced from time to time, imposing indescribable pressure on forces like the Feathermen, Cat People, and Fire Lions. During the meeting, Milena and the King of Frost, both from the legendary realm, had quite a somber look on their faces. All of this felt much like their previous continuous confrontations and battles with Fang of the Jackal Wolf. Yet, it was different. When contending with Fang of the Jackal Wolf, Yuan had limited power at his disposal and not many cards to play. He himself had no margin for error. A single misstep could send him plummeting into the abyss. Along with his territory, and countless people who trusted in him. Back then, the pressure on him was immense. Now, there was still pressure, of course, but he had many more trump cards in his hand and some room for error. Yuan even saw the clashes in the wilderness as a means of training his own troops. With such training, the elites had more opportunities to open up domains and kindle the light of will. The small teams, each led by a division general, had their shares of discoveries as well. The number of roots of corruption purified by the various heroes in recent days amounted to several dozen. Some wilderness buildings were also found. Blessing Temple, experience receiving a blessing can increase levels. Blessing Temple, buff receiving a blessing grants a random buff that lasts for 7 days. Skill Steal, block visitors of the building, who possess budding wisdom, have the chance to acquire the skill of blocking. Refugees Camp, a recruitment building that can recruit 3,300 refugees at once, refreshed every 3 days. This wilderness building will relocate in 36 days. In addition, the exploratory team had also encountered Bandit Camp, Musketeer Camp, and Gunman Tower, 3 recruitment buildings. Wilderness recruitment buildings are not common. However, as the search area expanded, such opportunities became more and more routine. For Yuan, these wilderness buildings were not useless. For instance, Musketeer Camp could recruit ordinary 3-star level musketeers to replenish the ranks of his gunman corps. The refugees recruited from the refugees camp could increase the population of territory citizens. Save up enough, and the upgrade to a level 6 territory wouldn't seem so far away. Still quite far, though. But the impact of these wilderness buildings was also not substantial, at least not as important and irreplaceable as the Soul Shrine. It's not that wilderness buildings are useless, it's just that I have improved a lot. Now, let alone Bandit Camp and other miracle buildings, even places offering opportunities like the Hero Duel Arena and the Secret Realm of Challenge can't provide much value for me. The Soul Shrine was a bit of an exception. Indeed, the Soul Shrine's abilities were very well suited to him, who held the evolutionary miracle. But even an ordinary lord obtaining the Soul Shrine could exchange the collected corpses for one superior troop remnant soul after another. This was a stable channel to obtain superior remnant souls. The value remained immense. The Soul Shrine was also not exclusive to miracle lords or heroes. There were no restrictions on its use, even wisdom monsters could make good use of it. If wilderness buildings could be ranked, then the Soul Shrine would undoubtedly be in a very high category. It seemed to have something special about it, too. Besides these common gains, the division generals sometimes encountered their own fortuitous finds during exploration. Just yesterday, June stumbled upon a gorge of clouds and mist and absorbed the materialized power of the wind within. With this wind's power, Jun's energy limit significantly increased, equating to a slight boost in potential, and considerable progress in refining his body. June also took this opportunity to create his own Kangfeng domain. He successfully advanced to a legendary seed contestant. Although, by benchmarks set by the Tianyuan division, June should have understood his own domain when evolving to an epic 3 stars position. According to the average achievements of Tianyuan division generals, June was still lagging behind. As of now, the closest division generals to legendary status in Tianyuan City included Rakshasa, 17, Sophia, June, Xilu, Hong Yi. That day, at 23 hours and 30 minutes into the night, in the Dragon Mound Fertile Land Secret Realm, Deadbone sat cross-legged inside the Ice Heart Lotus platform, his black cloak fluttering without wind, and a surge of black mist emanating from his body, as if to convey a profound meaning. All the division generals of Tianyuan City who were not on duty or standing guard had arrived without exception. Today was the joyous occasion of Deadbone General's promotion to legendary status. It was only natural they come to offer congratulations and observe the process. In the future, they too might have the chance to progress towards legend. For those like Yulu, 17, and Duo Lai, who hailed from a troop-type background, they regarded this as a significant evolution. For the likes of Ilo, Sophia, and Silly Xilu, not from a troop-type origin, it was a revelation. Even though they were well aware that their lord held the key to the gates of legend. Legend, so close at hand. Ilo exclaimed in awe. In her last life, she was barely clear on what a legend was. But in this life, through the immense platform of the Taishan Alliance, she had already gained a profound understanding of the nobility, reverence, greatness, and mystery of legendary lives. And now, a legend was about to be born right before her eyes. In the past, she was just a bumpkin who dared not even dream of the epic, yet now, she could even catch a glimpse of the legendary realm. She felt the luckiest thing in her life was meeting the right person at the right time and place. The hardships of her last life might have been to accumulate this fortune. Even Silly Xilu, with his thick nerves, had some understanding of the status of a legend. Outside, Yuan looked toward Ilo. Ilo gave a slight nod. She had specifically freed up several avatars today to stand guard at various key positions. All the instruments and equipment were operated by her personally. The domain interferer is now running at full power. The Dragon Mound Fertile Land secret realm is closing, closure complete. Outside, atop the Lord's altar, the pale golden portal slowly closed without leaving a sliver of a gap. The connection between the secret realm and the outside world had been severed. Of course, Yuan could still see the outside world through the Lord's vision and could manipulate various miracle buildings through the Lord's authority. The night sky, faint and shining with starlight, quietly enveloped Tianyuan city from above. Most of the activities outside the city had been halted. In silence, the entire Tianyuan city entered a first-level combat readiness state. Numerous elites ascended the battlements, watchtowers, and towers to stand guard seriously. Sophia's true body was outside, and countless black crows flew out, becoming her eyes and ears. The epic mage tower is in position. The magnificent tower hovered within the secret realm, not high above the Bingqing Lotus platform. Though several kilometers from the Lotus platform, an invisible shielding force had already spread. Inside the tower, Ilo and the half-trained apprentices she had brought with her were positioning themselves in different areas. The boundary steel has been activated. All other measures have been deployed, preparation work is complete. Ilo's task was done. What remained was the task of Lord Shepherd, who would take direct charge of the territorial power to conceal anomalies when needed. Nightfall, 24 o'clock, on the dot. Yuan extended a fingertip and gently tapped. The invisible evolution miracle power surged out like floodwaters released from a gate, glorious divine light cascading down from the azure sky. The vast evolutionary pond began to diminish swiftly. The water was nearly depleted. Yuan was not simply dispersing his evo power and calling it a day. As Dead Bone evolved, he held his breath and concentrated, carefully sensing the flow and changes of the evo power. This time was different, there was a quantity of 500,000 worth of evo power in motion. Even though he was still weak, he faintly discerned some of the mysteries of the evolutionary miracle. Unconsciously, Yuan became immersed in observing and comprehending the evo power. He lost himself in it. Forgot about time. When he suddenly awoke, it seemed like a long time had passed. How long has it been now? He saw that Dead Bone was still shrouded in the white light of evolution. The light was brilliant, long unwaning. It seemed that his immersive comprehension was not that long after all, it was just his own perception. It has been 3 hours and 25 minutes. Duo Lai counted with his fingers. 3, more than 3 hours? And Dead Bone's evolution seemed far from over. Is this the evolution of a legend? Outrageous! Chapter 408, Fire a Salute for the King's Birth. The evolutionary process described in legend actually takes this long? That's a bit outrageous. Yuan couldn't help but be surprised. How long does a typical evolution take? Just an instant. Even the evolution to an epic rank only takes a few minutes, just a while. The true time consumption comes after evolution, when everyone immerses themselves in deep enlightenment. And what about Dead Bone right now? Over 3 hours have passed, and the evolution's bright light still shone brilliantly without any sign of ending. This was somewhat beyond Yuan's expectations. Based on his estimates, he thought that even if a legendary evolution took longer, it would be no more than half an hour. How could he have foreseen that the entire evolution process might last several hours, or even half a day, 2 days? This was a fully enclosed evolution. Most of the division generals of the Tianyuan territory were gathered inside the Dragon Mound Fertile Land of the Secret Realm. Of the 6 legendary realms of Tianyuan, only the Tree Demon Granny was outside. If an enemy launched a surprise attack at this moment, it was feared that not a single strong warrior could be dispatched for reinforcement. Not good. Definitely not good. Lu had felt something was off early on. As soon as he saw Yuan waking up, he stepped forward. Lord, I request to go and stand guard outside. He, of course, wanted to witness the birth of a legend with his own eyes. But without a doubt, the safety of his territory was more critical. Had it not been for the Lord being immersed in the profound state of enlightenment, he would have requested to go to the outside world long ago. Lu was somewhat anxious. After all, the extraordinary celestial phenomena accompanying the birth of a legend had not yet appeared. The gate to the Dragon Mound Fertile Land of the Secret Realm could still be reopened. But if they waited until the legendary phenomena appeared, the Secret Realm's gate would not be able to be opened at all. Facing his diligent and loyal division general, who knew how to share his worries, Lord Shepherd naturally granted. Duo Lai looked around. With boss Deadbone evolving and Ilo overseeing the Mage Tower, it seemed that it, like Lu, had become an idle person. Since Lu was prepared to stand guard outside to prevent unforeseen events, it, Duo Lai, as one of the elders of the Tianyuan territory, naturally would carry the responsibility befitting an elder. It would go too. Although, if Lu hadn't mentioned it, it indeed hadn't thought of this point. Mu Yuan reopened the closed secret realms gate of the Dragon Mound fertile land and said to Duo Lai and Lu, when the evolution is nearing its end, I will notify you. By then, the secret realms gate may not be able to be opened, but you will still be able to witness the legendary moment through Hero's vision. The light gate opened. Several people quickly exited. The secret realms gate closed again. At this moment, Deadbone was still shrouded in the bright, mysterious light of evolution. Dazzling yet not blinding. Its figure and the overall ritual site had not changed at all. It looked like several more hours at least were needed before this legendary evolution could come to an end. Mu Yuan thought to himself, when he suddenly remembered something important. He turned to Ilo standing by his side. This Ilo was the sixth incarnation. She was wearing a hairband with a butterfly knot, slightly different in some minutiae from the other incarnations. How is the domain interferer running? What I mean is, the interferer can't run at full power for so long, right? Running at full power all the time might be more than the finances of his Tianyuan territory could bear. After all, the operation of the boundary steel, domain interferer, and other facilities required massive energy support. Tianyuan City had energy wells, not just one. But even so, they couldn't support the domain interferer full power, a huge energy consumer. Back when there were no energy wells, the consumption of this device running at full power could burn through hundreds of soul crystals per minute. Now, with energy wells offsetting most of the consumption, the rest wasn't a problem for Mu Yuan. Burning half an hour or an hour's worth was just a trivial expense. But if it burned for half a day, 2 days, 3 days, the Great Lord would be spitting blood. And that would be a grievous waste of money. The domain interferer couldn't withstand that either. What Mu Yuan worried about hadn't happened. Ilo had, more than 2.5 hours before, seen that there was still no change in the evolutionary light, and had already turned down the output power of the domain interferer. She had also reduced the operating power of the boundary steel and several other facilities. With a capable right-hand person, Mu Yuan felt comfortable and didn't need to worry about everything. Time slowly passed. 3 hours. 6 hours. 12 hours. The white light of evolution was still bright and consistent, without any change. Deadbone seemed like a rock standing firm upon a lotus platform within the white light. Outside, the large-scale magic of night-hidden starry sky had already been replaced 4 times. A new day of work had already begun. Above the tight defenses of Tianyuan City was another peaceful day. A few skirmishes occurred in the wild, but neither Duo Lai nor Lu needed to go out to assist. Lu waited calmly, planning the city's defensive lines when idle and leading a group of elites to patrol inside and outside the city continuously, checking for any vulnerabilities. Duo Lai paced back and forth. It was a bit peckish, but gorging at such a time wasn't appropriate. With nothing better to do, it could only fly up and down, to and fro over Tianyuan City, or simply sit down to practice its cultivation. It just found it hard to settle down. During this time, legendary elf Milena visited Tianyuan City to discuss important matters. Mu Yuan entertained her with an incarnation. As she left Tianyuan City, Milena looked back. Strange, Tianyuan City seems a bit more vigilant today, doesn't it? Am I imagining things? I haven't heard of any actions from the monster overlord. When we get back, let's raise the alert level of the natural garden by 1 as well. By this time, 18 hours had passed since Deadbone began its evolution. At this moment, the blazing white radiance of the evolution finally showed some change. Brighter. The pillar of light soared into the sky, with ripples like those on water, no longer constant as before. It was also at this moment that black fog began to emerge out of nowhere around Deadbone, growing increasingly dense. The black fog kept emerging, surging, and spreading, quickly enveloping the entire Ice Heart Lotus platform, and continued to spread. Spreading 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters. It had already exceeded the range of the boundary steel. Fortunately, this steel was designed to function internally rather than externally. After being adjusted by Ilo, it currently only employed features like concealment and hiding, with all other abilities turned off. Mu Yuan and the other spectators kept retreating, eventually withdrawing to 10,000 meters away. At this time, following the emergence of the black fog, a majestic presence and a chilling coercion began to rise from dead bone, growing stronger and stronger. Heaven and earth seemed to surge and roil like gigantic waves. The dark clouds pressed low, as if they were about to collapse. At this moment, if a fourth-order leader strongman attempted to move forward, they might collapse to the ground, unable to support themselves within a few thousand meters around dead bone. It was a coercion mixed with King's might, presence, and the power of heaven and earth. This pressure was still rising. Unbeknownst to them, dead bone's domain of death also began to spread. The pitch-black domain of death was inconspicuous amongst the black fog, but most of those present had their own domains and could keenly sense the power of a domain. And at this time, the radius of dead bone's domain was visibly starting to expand. It was an expansion to its extreme radius. 1600. 1601. 1602. Half an hour later, dead bone's domain radius had expanded to 2,000 meters. 2 hours later, dead bone's domain radius had expanded to 3,000 meters. 4 hours later, dead bone's domain radius had expanded to 4,000 meters. It had leapt directly from a heaven and earth realm of over 1,000 meters to a senior or even a half-peak heaven and earth realm. At this time, no heavenly phenomena had appeared, and dead bone's evolution was still far from over. Yuan was dumbfounded. He could tell that dead bone's level increase, the domain, body, and other subtle changes were all byproducts of the evolution and the life rank transition process. It could also be said that dead bone's overly weak and low stature was the reason for such significant changes. From this, I can already make an approximate judgment of the state of a legendary life at the time of its birth. At least, the legendary realm. Legend has it that upon birth you are a legend of the first realm, able to command the power of heaven and earth, with no legendary life below legend status. Even a newly born legendary life form is enough to thrash the vast majority of legends. This was his speculation. But apart from the lack of direct evidence, he figured he was getting quite close to the truth. In the future, once Tianyuan City firmly establishes itself in the eternal world, he might publish a paper on the birth of legends. Someday, Lord Shepherd might confidently declare with open arms, "No one understands legends better than I do." Suddenly, the brilliant pillar of light burst forth once again. It shot up into the heavens, illuminating the skies and the land for thousands of miles. Notice, your hero Dead Bone is undergoing a transformative redemption. Notice, Dead Bone's epic skill Wraith Sacred Mountain has been promoted during the evolutionary redemption. The area of Wraith Sacred Mountain will expand to 10 times its size in a short period. Boom! The majestic mountain of bones, like a mirage, towered above the black clouds. Above it, bones floated in the air, constantly intertwining to form one vicious bone construction after another. New constructions of Wraith Sacred Mountain were being built. The notification sounds kept dinging away. Notice, Dead Bone's epic skill King's Might has been promoted during the evolutionary redemption. King's Might can be materialized, greatly enhancing Dead Bone's light of will. At the same time, when facing wild undead beings, Dead Bone has a high probability of directly subjugating them. Notice, Dead Bone's epic skill Wither King Bone has been promoted during the evolutionary redemption. Dead Bone officially commands the concept of wither, converting its own energy into high-level power of witherness without the need for natural recovery. At the same time, Dead Bone and all bone constructions emerging from Wraith Sacred Mountain are imbued with a trace of the power of witherness. Dead Bone's 3 major epic skills had all undergone fundamental enhancements and changes. And at this time, 23 hours had passed since the beginning of the evolution, and it was still not over. However, the miraculous event of heaven and earth began to appear. There was a faint glimmer of golden light blossoming, and the congratulatory sounds of heaven and earth started to echo. The domain interferer operated at full power. All protective measures were fully employed. The golden light grew increasingly bright. Finally, the dazzling white light transformed into a magnificent golden skylight, shooting into the clouds, illuminating the pitch-black night. Between heaven and earth, the elements of death, the concept of death, and the concept of shadows were boiling, converging around Dead Bone, submitting to him. The faint mystical sounds of heaven and earth arose within the Dragon Mound fertile land secret realm. Growing louder and more resonant, ringing through heaven and earth. Above in the high sky was the cascading glimmer of light. The surrounding elements were rejoicing in excitement. This was the celebration of heaven and earth, honoring the birth of a great legendary life at this very moment. Ding! Notice, your hero dead bone bathed in the miracle's radiant light, has undergone a tremendous transformation, successfully ascending to a king of skeleton of legendary 1-star life form, and during this process, has awakened the legendary power. Necrotic Plague Breath. Notice, King of Skeleton Dead Bone uses himself as the base point, spreading the power of the evolutionary miracle to Wraith Sacred Mountain. The undead beings on Wraith Sacred Mountain have undergone transformation. Notice, on Wraith Sacred Mountain, a frost giant dragon, a shadow dragon, and a flesh mountain lord have been born, each stepping into the legendary realm, not a military species, without intelligence, not a normal breakthrough. Notice. At the same time, in the night sky above 10 Directions Island domain, a streak of golden light flashed across like a shooting star, disappearing in a blink. In the night sky of the Twilight Dominion, a golden meteor also flashed by. Shen Luo Domain, Agedness Great Domain, 9 Rivers Great Domain, and so on. In one great domain after another, some extraordinary celestial phenomena flickered. Some paid no attention, some marveled slightly, some had their pupils quake. At this moment, in the Taishan Alliance, Astronomical Society. This is a congratulation from heaven and earth, a legend has been born. The president of the Astronomical Society closed his eyes, then opened them again after a while. He said, judging by this celestial phenomenon, this newly born legend might even be within our own Taishan Alliance's territory. The assistant said, this is an auspicious sign. The president laughed, perhaps it is, though even if it's within our Taishan territory, the chances of it being related to us are slim, let alone the idea of tracing a legend. Legendary beings possess a very high status. Our astronomical society could observe the stars 100 times and still be unable to find the location of the legend. Legends are just that, something to talk about after dinner, don't get obsessed with chasing them. Let's continue monitoring the changes in the red mist instead. Yongxing Empire. A legend has been born, find it for me, find this legend. If I, Your Highness, can command a legend, the throne will be within reach soon. We cannot miss this chance. But Your Highness, with no clues at all, searching for this legend is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Search for that needle. It's precisely because it's hard to find that this legend is valuable. Find it for me. Yes. At the same time, in a certain great domain. This place was exceedingly desolate, the ground grey and black, with hardly a single plant to be seen for tens of thousands of miles, thick black fog churning between heaven and earth. This was the paradise of the undead. On the desolate land, skeletons staggered forward, vampires rose from their coffins, bone dragons roared as they flew across the sky. In the depths of the black land, inside an ancient, dark castle, a magnificent being with a crown on his head and soul flames burning in his eyes suddenly woke up. We undead have finally seen the birth of a new legendary life. The birth of a king. As if to confirm his words. As if answered by some predestined call. Outside the castle, on the black land, one undead after another suddenly knelt down towards a certain direction. They were offering their most sincere reverence for the birth of the king of the undead. Chapter 409, Raise the Calamity of the Undead. Tianyuan Territory, Dragon Mountain Fertile Land Secret Realm. The miraculous glow of evolution slowly receded, and the celestial phenomena, the mysterious celebratory sounds, after continuing for an hour or two, also slowly faded away. However, the strange scenery surrounding Dead Bone still existed. Wraith Sacred Mountain hung high, still continuously expanding and forming an extended group of white mountain peaks. These bone-laden mountains guarded the central Holy Mountain. Dark fog wound around the Holy Mountain, with bone dragons circling the lofty peaks as they flew, jointly guarding and supporting the central bone throne. Notification: King of Skeleton Dead Bone has awakened defense construction skills. White Bone Arrow Tower, rare. Corrosion Egg, rare. High Wall of White Bone, rare, with the afterglow of miracle power. Notification: King of Skeleton Dead Bone has awakened the special building skill Flesh Conversion Pool, rare. Notification: King of Skeleton Dead Bone has awakened the building skill Tower of Death, excellent. Notification. Ding. Notification: King of Skeleton Dead Bone can consume its own energy, as well as that of undead constructs/undead beings, to build miracle buildings such as White Bone Arrow Towers, but the construction range is limited to the territory of Wraith Sacred Mountain. Note: this range cannot be expanded through special buildings like watchtowers. On Wraith Sacred Mountain, earth-shattering changes were occurring, and in some places, fortresses constructed of white bone were even being built. In time, perhaps a majestic bone city could form here. Just the transformation of Wraith's sacred mountain alone has greatly increased Dead Bone's combat power. Moreover, his king's might and the power of witherness have transformed as well. His level has even increased dramatically. Even with Dead Bone's rapid training speed, such an increase would still have saved him half a year, or even a full year, of arduous effort. And this isn't an unnatural boost. Instead, from today onward, General Dead Bone's training speed could at least increase by several times. Is this the power of legend? No, this is just the residual power of legend. Yuan took a deep breath to calm his surging emotions, opened the panel, scrolled up to Dead Bone's list, to the ability shimmering with golden brilliance. Legendary power Necrotic Plague Breath. What's so special about it? Necrotic Plague Breath, legendary. Description: the signature of the King of the Undead, where the king steps, there spreads the breath of death. Ability 1, undead beings created by Dead Bone will no longer be subject to time constraints and can exist permanently. Ability 2, undead beings created by Dead Bone have a slight probability of developing intelligence. The higher the tier, the higher the probability. Ability 3, any individual personally slain by Dead Bone has a 100% chance of being converted into an undead being and enslaved by him, with the tier of the transformed undead beings determined by the level and tier of the slain individual. Additionally, enemies slain by the constructs created by Dead Bone also have a small probability of being converted into undead beings. Ability 4, the more undead beings under the command of Dead Bone, the greater the increase in Dead Bone's basic three-dimensional attributes and the scale of Wraith's sacred mountain will be. Yuan stared at the explanation listed on the panel, finding it increasingly exaggerated as he read. This legendary ability doesn't directly enhance Dead Bone's personal combat power, but it provides a possibility, an infinite possibility. A snowball effect of possibility. The devouring ability of Duo Lai, the reaping what you sow of Yuta, are also abilities that can continuously break limits, but compared to Necrotic Plague Breath, they are insignificant. If Dead Bone were to slay 100 legendary monsters, converting them into undead enslaved by himself, how would his enemies cope? Moreover, this Necrotic Plague Breath seems to be able to be somewhat coordinated with Wraith's sacred mountain. Certainly, there are many things Yuan has yet to discover, or rather, abilities that cannot be clearly described just with the information provided. Is this the greatness of legend? Lord Shepherd murmured. In his view, the transformations and metamorphoses that had occurred already were beyond expectations and could be deemed legendary. The enhancement of 3 epic skills, the breakthrough in level, the drastic changes in Wraith's sacred mountain, and the acquisition of the power of Necrotic Plague Breath. Such massive improvement was indeed exaggerated. No wonder legends are said to be mysterious and powerful, beyond the reach even of mortals and other legends. If every legend possesses such exaggerated abilities, 3 epic plus abilities, and a legendary power, then indeed legends are not to be trifled with by ordinary strong beings, even if it's just a newly born young legend. However, Yuan always felt that normal legendary abilities shouldn't be so exaggerated. Either Dead Bone was an exception, or it was the power of the evolutionary miracle. After all, the troops that underwent evolutionary baptism often achieve perfect evolution, possessing more skills and talents than same-tier troops. Skills can be acquired later, and sometimes talents can also be obtained through chance. Some of the old 4th Order strongmen have as many as 20 or 30 skills. The elites of Tianyuan, still green hands, have no advantage in quantity compared to other 4-order beings, even though their skill grades are higher. However, at the epic level, epic abilities are no longer obtainable through later learning. Trying to gain epic abilities through luck is as difficult as training an excellent 3-star level being to the epic tier. And here in Tianyuan City, the topmost epic strong possess 3 epic abilities each. Currently, there is only one legend, Dead Bone, lacking sample size, so it's unclear what normal legends are like. Maybe the next time, or the time after the next evolution, I can probably figure out some patterns. Yuan suddenly felt that next time, the time after that, wouldn't work either. The next evolution legend was likely to be General Duo Lai. The one after that would either be Ilo or Lu Lu. Even if it was Lu Lu, he was no ordinary powerhouse. He would talk about it later. The entire evolution process lasted a full 24 hours. Once the legendary celestial phenomenon completely disappeared, and after waiting an hour, Yuan then opened the Dragon Mound Fertile Land secret realm. Ilo also controlled the epic mage tower, which she landed back in a secluded area of the Dragon Mountain secret realm. Turning off the mage tower's power, it transformed into an ordinary but magnificent high tower that stood firmly on the ground. The evolution ceremony had ended, and so had the slacking off. It was time to work. Ilo suddenly felt a bit melancholic. An evolution where as many as 4 avatars plus the original could slack off was indeed rare. But while 4 avatars were slacking off, there were 9 others that were working. Could this really be called slacking off? She stretched lazily. Who made the Lord such a great benefactor to me? Let's continue working. I too wish to see the day when Yuan city stands at the pinnacle of the world. As everyone slowly dispersed, the figure on the ice heart lotus platform still sat immovable like a rock. The holy mountain hung high. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Deadbone was still immersed in profound enlightenment. It was taking quite some time. The afterglow of evolution had long since been exhausted. Since Deadbone was in enlightenment, Yuan, of course, would not disturb him, but he did blockade the area around the Ice Heart Lotus platform to prevent any warriors from accidentally entering. Elites who needed to evolve or practice a special skill were assigned to the external core area of the Ice Heart Lotus platform. Yuan City had 2 exceptional Ice Heart Lotus platform buildings. Yuan did not stay within the secret realm. He had his own work to do, either approving documents in the city lord's mansion or heading to the elf's courtyard to listen to music, and gathering intelligence. No one discussed the matter of the legendary phenomenon. This was very good. But Zhang Loxing, Lu Miamu and the others were still third-order warlord-level weaklings, for whom legendary phenomena were too distant. If there were such news, it would not reach their ears. Yuan still maintained Yuan City's vigilance and had Sophia, as well as Daisy, who went to the Twilight Dominion, collect all kinds of rumors. Suddenly, a notification tone rang in his ear. Ding! Notification, your hero Deadbone has grasped a trace of the power of withering. Deadbone's concept of the power of withering has grown significantly. Yuan. He recognized these words, but why did it seem a little hard to comprehend? Law. Isn't the law realm, the hallmark of legendary third realm, meant to have such distinctive abilities? Like the hallmark of the legendary first realm is to wield the power of heaven and earth. The hallmark of the legendary second realm is to forge a god base, igniting the divine fire. A hallmark is a hallmark because it cannot be surpassed. Just like epic abilities, only epic lives can possess them. Yuan got up and went to the Dragon Mountain secret realm. When he arrived, Deadbone's silent body slowly awakened. Lord! Great! 1. It appeared somewhat dazed. In its daze, it realized that it had actually been engulfed in profound enlightenment for a full 3 days. Originally, it intended to maintain a trace of clarity in enlightenment and firmly remember its experiences to write a summary. It was indeed very alert at the beginning. Enlightenment and clarity are not in conflict, it was like observing oneself from a third-person perspective from high above. However, after advancing to legendary status and seeing the deeper aspects of the world, witnessing those profound and mysterious traces, it unconsciously became engrossed. It had been careless. Reflection was needed. Deadbone was a skeleton, but Yuan could see its complexion constantly changing. Why was it changing color? Before coming, Yuan specially researched what a law was. A law is a law. In the legendary third realm law realm, one can comprehend the laws of heaven and earth, and using the power of law can cause conceptual damage in some aspect or greatly enhance existing conceptual abilities. Moreover, it seemed that with the power of law, some mysterious operations could be achieved. However, as for what exactly could be done, Yuan was unclear. It was too advanced, too distant, and there was no paid information available. Yuan could only learn bits and pieces from Deadbone. Are you saying, after evolving to legendary status, you saw the laws of heaven and earth in the void, among which the desolate law was the most distinct? Over the past 3 days, Yuan had indeed loaded Deadbone's legendary template. But he hadn't seen any profound law patterns. This certainly wasn't because Mr. Mew's comprehension was lacking, it was simply that the Lord's power wasn't forceful enough. After all, it was a capability that every Lord possessed, one couldn't expect too much from it. The use of Lord's power greatly reduces the effectiveness of epic skills, let alone legendary ones. He hadn't tried the skill Wang Ling ZX, he lacked a suitable opportunity to do so. But, had he really tried it, he assumed it would probably be inferior even to a beggar's version. He decided not to experiment himself, but to let Dead Bone give it a try. Where do you plan to start? Bone still has some hesitations. Dead Bone said. Wang Ling ZX could easily unleash a great calamity of death, but such action would undoubtedly cause a huge commotion. It wasn't certain whether its evolution into a legendary being had caught the attention of any powers. Directly inciting an undead calamity was somewhat precarious. Moreover, my Wraith Sacred Mountain has already expanded to a certain limit. Both my direct judgment and subsequent analysis suggest that it's best to seek out a treasured location to settle the Wraith Sacred Mountain. This way, Wang Ling ZX and Wraith Sacred Mountain can develop and grow in complementary strength. The Wraith Sacred Mountain would rapidly devour the surrounding lands when manifested in reality, turning them into its own territory. This did not hinder it from traveling outside. During campaigns, it would project a reflection of the Wraith Sacred Mountain to confront enemies and suppress them. However, materializing the Wraith Sacred Mountain required even more caution. Yuan nodded in agreement. Naturally, the Wraith Sacred Mountain could be manifested within the skeleton cemetery, but doing so would limit its growth. Dead Bone wanted to be stable, but stability didn't mean sacrificing the future. The Sacred Mountain can wait, but as for Wang Ling ZX, you can have a little trial run. 2 days later. In the 10 Directions Island domain, the northern region, within the territory of the Overlord Power, Black Crow Clan. Having summarized and digested his personal experience, Dead Bone traveled all the way here. It was scouting information on the Black Crow Clan and the Orokai Clan while searching for isolated legendary beings. Sophia's flock of crows also fluttered in these regions, their pairs of eyes scanning all around. Perhaps because this area was part of the Black Crow Clan's territory, the legendary monsters did not deliberately conceal their movements. Soon, Sophia's flock of crows made a discovery. There are 2 legendary monsters, coordinates approximately, XXXXX. At a certain location. 2 legendary creatures of the Black Crow Clan were swooping through the low sky. All things will eventually return to witherness. The deep voice lingered between heaven and earth. From a low chant to a deafening roar. Dead Bone approached on black clouds undisguised, surrounded by a barrier of dark fog. The elements of death and shadow in the world were its soldiers. The legends of the Black Crow Clan were not frightened in the least. After all, this was their territory, and the main base wasn't far away. What did it matter if this human legendary being was strong? Together, take down the enemy. Hey! What are you doing? The legendary of the Black Crow Clan kept its gaze locked on Dead Bone, not daring to look away. He shouted, but there was no response from his comrade. He was puzzled. Suddenly. Pucci! A gaunt and bony claw pierced through his chest. The claw came from behind. The legendary being of the Black Crow Clan, whose pupils had suddenly shrunk, slowly turned around and saw that his comrade had already changed beyond recognition. Fur fallen out, flesh withered, and one eyeball had even popped out. Despite such a ghastly state, the aura of ferocity and brutality of a legendary realm still emanated from the comrade. This aura was also imbued with death, power intertwined with death. Strength rapidly drained from the legendary Black Crow. Before he could struggle, his consciousness completely left his body. The last thing he saw was that his own body was also undergoing some kind of transformation. Crack! Crack! His fur and flesh had completely fallen off. From the death arose a skeleton general of the legendary realm, and a Grim Reaper bird, also of legendary status. They were completely different from before, thorough undead beings. They had no intelligence, but they possessed combat instincts, combat experience, and seemingly. The skeleton general raised its hand. Nightfall descended around them. That was a power from its previous life, now inherited. Additionally, the skeleton general had a corresponding set of bone skills and even strands of the power of witherness. It was even more powerful than before. This was Wang Ling ZX. Chapter 410, Eye of Reincarnation, Advancing Towards the Academy. Dead Bone made a brief foray onto the wilderness, rapidly forming an undead troop composed of 2 beings from the legendary realm and dozens of leader-level undead within just half a day. It did not resurrect more undead. A larger number would have been too conspicuous. It could use the Wraith Sacred Mountain to accommodate these undead beings. However, the Wraith Sacred Mountain exists between reality and illusion, so it was feasible to briefly shelter a group of lives not native to the Wraith Sacred Mountain for a short time, but not for an extended period. No more legendary realm monsters were encountered except for the first 2. Dead Bone wasn't overly regretful, it understood that the pressing matter was to find the next path for development. Whether it was the Wraith Sacred Mountain or necrotic plague breath, to unleash their real power, choices had to be made. As Deadbone pondered, it unwittingly arrived at the familiar end of the great domain, shrouded in frenzied elemental tides, the land of seals. Since it was already there, Deadbone moved forward. It was contemplating, but this did not prevent it from getting some work done. Step. Deadbone stepped onto the barren land where not a single blade of grass grew. Off in the distance, elemental particles visible to the naked eye boiled, stirring up tides like storms and tsunamis. But suddenly, as Deadbone moved forward step by step, the turbulent natural energies began to calm down. The surrounding storms continued, yet a clear, calm path emerged in the middle. Deadbone entered it, with the waves on either side falling like petals, guarding its advance. Suddenly, Deadbone ate. In surprise. A normal person looking around would see the bare land and the colorful swathes of energy tides. A legendary realm being looking around would see, in addition to these, the incredibly violent and uncontrollable elemental particles between heaven and earth. But Deadbone looked around and saw threads and wisps, symbols the essence of the world. And in one direction, the pattern of the law of death, dense and deep, stretched out far and wide. After a moment's thought, Deadbone followed this direction and strode forward. 10 kilometers. 100 kilometers. 1,000 kilometers. The scenery around was still the same, the land desolate and the surge of energy forming tides. But in Deadbone's eyes, the pattern symbolizing death became increasingly clear. It was almost there, just about to arrive. The distance between the sky and the land suddenly started to close, and the energy between them grew increasingly violent and robust. Some of that wild energy broke through the deterrence of King's might, scraping against Deadbone's skeletal armor with a rattling noise as it rushed over like a fierce wind and massive waves. It's a realm passageway, didn't expect to find it in this way. Deadbone had been searching for the passage for a very long time, several days, if not a couple of weeks, without any results. This was because within the region, the tidal forces caused major limitations to visibility and all sorts of perception abilities, making the search inefficient indeed. Had it not evolved into a legendary life, it probably would have taken another 3 or 4 months of continuous searching to locate this passageway. The energy storms here are much stronger than the storms in the eastern seas. Deadbone stood there for a moment, then, with a thought, a huge frost giant dragon with glittering scales roared as it flew out. Even with its tough scales, the frost giant dragon was scarred by the energy storm, deep wounds visible on its body. Luckily, the passageway was after all not long, and as an undead being, the frost giant dragon's minor injuries did not affect its flight. It quickly flew across the passage, reaching the opposite great domain and continued forward. In sight, there were wisps of red mist, but compared to the red clouds filling the sky of the red mist land, it was far less. The opposite great domain wasn't the one where Dragon Sleep Valley was located. It was an entirely new great domain. Deadbone hence moved forward, walking through the tumultuous energy tides straight into this new territory. The sky and earth here seemed somewhat more dim. As the energy storm was still ongoing, Deadbone retracted the frost giant dragon that was here and merged its form into the natural tides, cautiously advancing further. It continuously scanned the surroundings with its gaze. Finally, the energy tides dissipated, Deadbone emerged from the frenzied area, and the world before its eyes suddenly became bright and clear. The new great domain presenting itself to Deadbone's vision was dark clouds heavy and oppressive, covering all celestial light. Surrounding it were wisps and strands of red mist drifting, but more abundant were the thick black fogs which moved in fits and bursts. Gloomy winds howled. Foliage withered. Corpses littered the ground. The entire world was saturated with a deathly aura that intoxicated it. Ah! Deadbone took a deep breath, the black fog entering its nose and mouth like flowing streams. The environment here was no worse than the skeleton cemetery. And this place was merely the outskirts of the great domain. If a nest were established here, what it referred to was settling the Wraith Sacred Mountain permanently into a territory of its own. There were 2 advantages to this action. Firstly, the soil of this great domain was very well suited for the existence of the undead. Here, the Wraith Sacred Mountain's growth speed and future potential would be far greater than in other places. Secondly, this great domain and the 10 Directions Island domain were completely different, allowing it to use the necrotic plague breath power without any reservations. No matter how it was used, it would not affect Yuan City in the 10 Directions Island domain. The plan seemed feasible. However, initially, a vast network of reconnaissance and preparatory work would still need to be carried out. Deadbone thought as much. A great domain filled with undead energy. Could it be that this domain is the territory of an undead force? Does the eternal world have undead forces? There definitely are. The types of troops that can be recruited from the Lord's altar. Goblins, skeletons, vampires, half-orcs, etc. indicate what races exist in the eternal world. At least, they once existed. It's inevitable that the undead forces exist, it's just that Yuan might be somewhat ignorant and hasn't heard much about them. From what he understood, the current vitality forces are mainly composed of humans. The Descenders' 7 great nations, the native forces of the Holy Griffin Empire, Star Luo Holy Palace, Kizuo Anta Federation, and other forces mostly consist of human races within. On the other hand, the Federation of All Nations is home to elves, orcs, and other sub-human groups. There are also the Dwarven Nation, as well as Dragon Valley, where many giant dragons reside. Perhaps the undead live in more remote areas and don't quite fit in with mainstream vitality forces, which is why we haven't heard much about them. Yuan conjectured. After all, prior to the onset of the Blight, vitality could hardly be associated with the undead. In the Old Age, the undead and races such as humans and elves didn't get along very well. This was normal. Only when the top nations of the Old Century, like the Bright Empire, Moon Elf Sanctum, and other forces faced the brink of collapse, did all living beings unite to fight against the Blight. That's what the historical records say. However, the historical records Yuan found were only fragmentary at best. At the same time, in the unpredictable 10 Directions Island domain, while Deadbone was exploring the new Great Domain, the Tianyuan caravan, led by Daisy, arrived at Panchi City for the second time. This time, Daisy did not take detours to various newly established camps or other peripheral small territories, she directly followed the route opened up last time, straight to here. The time spent was naturally much less. This time, Daisy intended to establish a true stronghold for the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce in Panchi City. Last time, she only left behind a few people as the vanguard to probe the situation in Panchi City. But this time, in addition to establishing a stronghold for the chamber, and building trade relationships with the trade associations in the Panchi City region and Twilight Dominion, Daisy also bore the responsibility of transportation. On this trip, she used 2 passenger airships. One for carrying people and cargo, the other exclusively for passengers, cramming in over 100 people. Even for the Dragonfish 2 passenger airship, this number of passengers was far beyond its capacity. This is where we part ways, I wish you a smooth journey. You too. The speaker was Irene, the principal of Tianyuan City's academy. She said, the more than 30 of us staying in Panchi City will be in your care. Lian Yu thumped his chest confidently, no problem at all. Daisy, but you'll be traveling back and forth with the caravan, right? You won't be staying in Panchi City often. Oh, right. Lian Yu's wolf ears drooped down. Vampire Marquis Jabai took over, don't worry, I'm well versed in this. I'll be sure to become good friends with the Dean of Panchi City's Academy. Jabai was a member of the Tianyuan Chamber of Commerce. He had been stationed in Shilling Town, mingling among various lords and officials, and was adept at socializing with them. In this regard, Jabai's capabilities were sufficient to rank him among the top few in Tianyuan City. Naturally, Jabai was stationed in Panchi City with significant responsibilities. His work was not limited to the Chamber of Commerce, he would also be Tianyuan Territory's representative in Panchi City, although he might be more involved with the Chamber's affairs. Besides, Jabai was also ready to take on a teaching role at Panchi City's academy, earning full attendance and teaching the new era's green hands. It was just the right task for him to lead the other 30 or so people who were either preparing to teach or study at Panchi City's academy. Irene and the other 60 or so people arrived at Panchi City's railway station, ready to take the Tai-Shen Alliance's standard steel train to the distant main city at Lake Haven Lake. I heard that Tian City is much more prosperous than Panchi City. We've decided to make Tian City our next stop. You guys should help us gather some information. In front of the station, Daisy said goodbye to everyone with a smile. Irene said it was no problem. Hong Yi said she would do her best. She was also one of the staff members on this business trip, and even the person in charge. She never imagined that she, an old house girl who holed up in a grave mound, would be chosen by the Lord. No way. All she wanted was to lie in the coolness of her grave mound, enjoying the chill of summer. A few days ago, just after Dead Bone had evolved, Hong Yi returned to her own grave mound and was caught by Mu Yuan. The organization has a difficult task for you. Don't be too quick to refuse. If you accept this task, the organization will grant you an evolutionary baptism in advance. It's an interest-free loan, you know. Hong Yi blinked her innocent eyes. Could she decline this loan? Seeing as it's a difficult task. She felt there were many others more capable and suitable than her. Mu Yuan interrupted her, "You're the most suitable, the most capable." Mu Yuan continued, "Think about it. Our trip to the academy is not only to learn knowledge but also to bring it back and spread it throughout Tianyuan City. Therefore, only you, with your illusion ability, are the most suited to undertake this mission. Your job is also quite simple. Just use your illusion power to record the content of the lectures one-to-one, ensuring that future students in Tianyuan City can experience it as if they were there. It doesn't matter even if you don't understand it yourself." Since she had been targeted by the Lord, it seemed she couldn't escape this task, this loan. Work is not easy, Hong Yi sighed. She pondered carefully, the job indeed wasn't difficult, just using illusions to record things. There were plenty of sturdy folks in the underworld ghost market. She could just scoop them up and set a fixed illusion recording mode, so she wouldn't have to work too hard herself. Compared to overseeing the noisy mines every day and developing combined skills for the underworld ghost market, it was indeed much easier. Thus, with a resigned face, Hong Yi embarked on her business trip. Before setting off, she also bathed in the baptismal radiance, stepping into the realm of epic 3 stars and awakened an eye-based technique. Eye of Reincarnation. Description: Hong Yi can create a space through Eye of Reincarnation, a realm between existence and non-existence, where time is constant, and can directly pull a single target into this cycle. This pull contains the concept of compulsion, but the compulsory force will greatly diminish when pulling the same target a second time. Hong Yi can repeatedly experience battles in the cycle space and select the optimal outcome to make it real. This reality also has the compulsion concept and cannot be resisted by illusion resistance. Inside the cycle space, Hong Yi's illusion ability is greatly enhanced and has a reality concept. At the same time, the Eye of Reincarnation can slice a certain area or Hong Yi herself, storing up to 6 slices. Hong Yi's ability seemed quite mysterious and seemed to require skillful operation. It seemed to follow her second epic ability like illusion. The epic talent like illusion was actually a bit of a mixed blessing. It seemed to cover a wide range and had a very high ceiling, with many possible derivations. However, when Hong Yi used it, she found that materializing powerful techniques consumed a vast amount of energy. If she materialized illusions that directly affected the enemy, for instance, sticking a sword into an enemy or nullifying an enemy's attack, the consumption was enormous. She would wilt after using it only a few times. In the past few battles, Hong Yi could only play a supportive role, seizing the key moments to exert a little bit of influence. Before her evolution, Hong Yi's combat power had fallen outside the top 10, even outside the top 15, of the Tianyuan powerhouse list. There was no helping it. Those with the light of will had too strong a resistance to illusions, rendering Hong Yi's primary abilities useless. Now, however, Hong Yi's illusion ability has taken on new vitality. But Hong Yi didn't like sparring and preferred to study illusions on her own in the grave mound. The exact effect of Eye of Reincarnation had not been accurately tested, and Mu Yuan did not know either. Mu Yuan's thoughts wandered. Suddenly, he received a message from Irene through the spirit seed. The train they were on had arrived at Lake Haven Lake's main city. Chapter 411, 4 people from Tianyuan City. Panchi City and the main city of Lake Haven Lake were incredibly distant from each other, with a continuous mountain range and magnificent rivers and lakes lying between them. However, this was already within the territory of the Taishan Alliance, where every few dozen to 100 kilometers at least one domain was situated. There were villages and towns, cities and people. In such a region, not to mention monster overlords, not even a large monster tribe could be seen. At most there were some small monster camps, minor tribes, breeding like stains in some remote, rarely visited places. High-order monsters were extremely rare. Occasionally, there might be a 3rd order or 4th order flying monster passing through the territory. For ordinary caravans, traveling these roads still required vigilance and caution. However, for the steel train, armed to the teeth with several 4th order strongmen on board, the wilderness of the Taixuan realm was a smooth and unobstructed safe land. Even during the early to mid stages of the Red Fog disaster moon, the steel train could tear through the waves of monsters, reaching the front-line defense strongholds, let alone during peacetime. The train sped along its way, and although Lord Shepherd was not aboard, through the descriptions of Irene and others, he also roughly glimpsed the splendid grandeur of the Taishan rivers and mountains. It was a bit of a pity not to have seen it with his own eyes. But he would see it sooner or later, so there was no rush at this moment. The steel train, originating from Panchi City, passed through many official cities along the way, several of which were level 7 major cities. However, when referring to official major cities, only Lake Haven, Panstone, and Red Maple were the regional administrative and military hubs. Among them, Panchi City had the poorest economic level. After all, the original purpose of establishing Panchi City was to monitor the Goblin Kingdom situated in the dark Great Forest. Even if Panchi City had the poorest economic development among the 3 cities, it was still far more prosperous than the other few official major cities. As official major cities, they naturally had various administrative institutions, which naturally attracted numerous professionals. Compared to the cities managed by individuals or groups, they naturally had tremendous advantages. He heard that the main cities of some great lords had defense installations solid as a fortress, yet when it came to prosperity, those cities had little to do with prosperity. For construction and all, it still has to be Taishan officials. It's a pity, though, that the spiritual link network can now only carry out ultra-long distance conversations and voice transmissions. If it could transmit pictures or support video chats, that would be even more wonderful. Yuan thought somewhat greedily. The steel train, having run for less than a day, slowly pulled into the northern station of Tian City, and travelers from various parts of the Twilight Dominion got off one after another. Some of them casually carried or embraced parcels larger than themselves as they confidently strode towards the station exit. There were also some whose hands were empty, but the armor or robes they wore were clearly not ordinary, radiant with the faint luster of precious artifacts. Others were followed by a dozen or even dozens of uniformly dressed, well-equipped elite warriors. Under the guard of these warriors, they walked out very stylishly. This scene filled many with envy. Inside Tian City's northern station, some people were still wearing ordinary clothes with distinct Langsing profound country style. Others were dressed in leather armor, metal armor, or robes, and the two seemed out of place with each other. From attire to demeanor to temperament, everything was distinct. The majority of the former group were ordinary citizens of Xian country who had integrated into the eternal world just over 4 months ago. 4 months was actually not short. Many beta test lords had become imbued with the fierce spirit of the eternal world in less than 2 months, and that was with the first month spent using computers as a medium. 1 month was sufficient otherwise. Yet, the mass of Greenhand professionals who integrated after the world merged still lived mostly within the defense circle of the main city of Lake Haven Lake. Many of these people had neither seen a monster nor killed a chicken. At most, they had encountered some oddly shaped troops, which greatly broadened their horizons. "We've finally arrived in Tian City, we'll be studying here for 2 years, said a young man in plain clothes, filled with excitement. "Yes, I've heard that the educational faculty of the academies in Tian City is the best in the entire Great Domain, and we are so fortunate to be able to study here. What luck, isn't this just our exceptional talent? Getting into Lake Haven Academy and Great Lake Academy is incredibly difficult, and our arrival here is all thanks to diligence and effort, not something to be summed up by the word luck. Actually, having money and connections works too." Why are you all silent? Did I say something wrong? Let's talk about something else, shall we? Do you see those accompanied by a dozen or so guards? Aren't they the so-called miracle lords? Speaking of luck, the lords who were selected early to enter the Eternal Continent are the real lucky ones. I also want to be a lord, recruiting a few fox ladies or elf maids. You're thinking too much. From what I understand, the majority of troops controlled by the lords are either the short, stout, ugly goblins or just ordinary spearmen, shieldmen. Beautiful elves are not so common. However, we shouldn't sell ourselves short. We are the first cohort of students at Lake Haven Academy, the pride of the heavens, and it's not impossible for us to establish our own territories and command legions in the future. Besides, compared to being a small lord in a backward village, I'd rather make my way in a large city. That's much better than being a village leader. There were 3 major high-order educational institutions in the main city of Lake Haven Lake, namely Lake Haven Academy, Great Lake Academy, and Heavenly Splendor Academy. The former 2 are public institutions that have existed prior to this year, but in response to the Alliance's call, both academies expanded several times over in size, adding numerous new campuses and miracle buildings, including the affiliate first-class junior college of Lake Haven Lake. This month, Tian City Academy has welcomed more and more people. There are exceptional green hand professionals from various places. There are professionals who wish to participate in the independent recruitment of Lake Haven Academy and Great Lake Academy, and then there are some students sent by the Lords, ready to further their study and training here. There were also some people who were different from the previous three groups. This batch of people looked extraordinary and each of them appeared to be an expert. They are strong contenders from various territories and cities who wish to apply for teaching positions at Lake Haven Academy. The treatment of instructors here is first class. Officials provided quite attractive benefits to lure the experts sent by the Lords, and the Tian City officials further increased these incentives. For this reason, the strong contenders applying for teaching positions at Lake Haven Academy are endless. In the past half a month, the number has reached its peak. It's said that it's because the red mist tide in Nanyang began to recede, and the front-line battles have essentially ended, so the Lord's subordinates have the time to come here to apply for instructor positions and train, Irene said. She and Sophia are best friends, so she naturally knows more about some non-secret information. Hong Yi waves her hand, indicating that she doesn't care about these things. She's only concerned about when the recruitment exam will start so that she can get it over with and rest sooner. It's tomorrow. Irene said. In the past, the instructor recruitment exam at Lake Haven Academy took place once every 7 days, but due to the increase in people this time, it's held every 3 days. Since I have some free time today, I'll take the others to the junior college to register and handle the procedure first. Hong Yi, whatever works. Hong Yi, Irene, and their group consisted of dozens of people, but the vast majority of these individuals were just ordinary students coming here to learn and further their education. They were talented individuals with sharp minds and excellent past performance, diligently selected by Great Lord Shepherd from the citizens of Tianyuan City. Such study abroad opportunities were quite rare. Once they return from their studies, they will become the first batch of core technical experts of Tianyuan City. The ones who were truly preparing to apply for instructor positions were only Irene, Hong Yi, Zhou Yi, and Sang Hun. Just 4 people. There's no need to say more about Irene, although she's not very competent in combat, she's at least stronger than Daisy, and her theoretical experience is exceptionally rich. Besides, being a 4th-order peak, epic 1-star strong woman, she couldn't be considered weak. Hong Yi was the strongest of the 4, only half a step away from stepping into the legendary realm. In fact, upon coming here, Hong Yi planned to break through to the legendary realm in Tian City. The ceremonial venues in Tian City were very high-end, and it's even rumored that there were epic-grade cultivation buildings. Most importantly, as an instructor at Tian's Advanced College, one could use the legendary breakthrough venues for free and buy materials at a hugely discounted price. This was how Tian City attracted the strong. Breaking through to the legendary realm would naturally be a breeze for Hong Yi here. Where else to break through if not here? However, she needed to be incredibly cautious about evolving, but with Hong Yi having reached the epic 3 stars rank, she couldn't evolve further in the short term. Zhou Yi was the second strongest in the arrow of Polar Star, a late 4-order, epic 2 stars adept. He did not possess the same level of mental talents as 17 but was a notch above her in archery skills. Sang Hun, on the other hand, was a strong contender among the Ghost Leaders series, holding the rank of epic 1 star, albeit his path was different from Rakshas's or Hong Yi's. Sang Hun was neither proficient in evil spirits power nor in illusion technique. During his evil spirits and ghost general phases, he was at best just a somewhat prominent figure. Later, Sang Hun encountered his own fortune and experienced mutations during his evolution. He still was a ghost leader but acquired a special epic skill. Shared fate. Description: Sang Hun can lock onto and link with a certain individual and return the damage received to that target with several times the force when he is injured. But shared fate was not just about synchronizing damage, it could also sync some profound experiences. Sang Hun, thus, leveraged this to gain a powerful learning ability, and he has now become a formidable figure among the ghost leaders, just behind big brother Rakshasa and sister Hong Yi as the self-proclaimed third ghost. The next day, Irene, Hong Yi, and the 4 of them came to Lake Haven Academy and were led straight to the venue for the application assessment. A miracle building of the excellence rank. By the staff. There were already quite a few people gathered here. There were instructors who had already passed the assessment, powerful figures who responded to lucrative recruitment, candidates preparing for the application, and even spectators who were simply there for the curiosity of it. However, to be among the spectators within Lake Haven Academy, one had to at least have some connections or ways in. In the distance, a fourth-order peak strongman was announcing the rules. The rules for the instructor assessment are quite simple, he said. First, strong contenders who are named on the Dragon Gate ranking will be recruited by our Lake Haven Academy unconditionally, without any assessment required. The higher the ranking on the list, the more benefits and treatments one can enjoy, he explained. Second, one must last 60 seconds within our Lake Haven Academy's self-developed Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation. Third, one must have a specialist level certification of proficiency recognized by the Alliance. Needless to say, Hong Yi and the rest didn't have that. Certifications required examination. Besides, Tianyuan City was in dire need of technical talents, and what they mainly wanted to obtain for free here was precisely those skills. On the Dragon Gate ranking, their names did not appear either. Only the top strong men who have fought in public can leave their names on the Dragon Gate ranking. They are just nobodies, they might as well just go through the motions. Hong Yi thought. The next moment, within the vast grounds of the Miracle Building, a huge ice-blue formation with a diameter of over a kilometer slowly took shape. Within it, one after another, lifelike and majestic water dragons roared as they surged out from beneath the surface of the formation, only to dive back in the distance, repeating the cycle over and over. This was the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation, and at the same time, one of the important training facilities of Lake Haven Academy. Next, we will have the honor of a demonstration by our Academy's special grade instructor, Red Shadow. A fourth-order peak strongman spoke from a distance. Soon, a man wearing armor, with red hair sharp as spikes, slowly walked into the Water Dragon's Lament formation. As the formation activated, a curtain of water sealed the internal space, the water dragons roared even more fiercely. Waves surged. Storms brewed. Realistic coercion radiated from these water dragons. There were third order and fourth order, numbering in the hundreds. Of course, this Water Dragon's Lament is an illusionary killing formation. Out of these 100-odd water dragons, perhaps only about 20 are real. But even so, stepping inside is tantamount to being besieged by multiple fourth-order strong men. One careless move could lead to defeat, not to mention lasting 60 seconds. A strongman who appeared to be a local was speaking with the demeanor of someone experienced. Seeing this scene, Sanghun approached and offered a cigarette. "Brother, you seem to be familiar with this place." "Of course." The youth said, "I and my lord have been in Tian City for 7 or 8 years, and I've come to the old campus of Lake Haven Academy countless times. I'm very familiar with it." "Your lord?" Sanghun was somewhat confused. The youth said, "Hey, that's quite normal here in the main city of Lake Haven Lake. There are at least 100 or 200 lords who have settled here long term. Isn't living here much more comfortable than going to some small remote lordship? Like my lord, the management of the 6th level territories is all handled by corporations, he might not return even once a year. What about you, brother? You're not from the Tian City region, right?" "That's right, we come from a very distant 5th level small city. This is my first time traveling far from home to the big city." A year-old Sanghun said shyly. At that moment, exclamations came from afar. The strongman named Red Shadow had cleanly and decisively breached the Water Dragon's Lament formation. It was not about enduring, but piercing through. The young man was not surprised. Normal. You don't watch the news much, brother." He found it unsurprising. Residents of smaller cities, other than the lord and the generals in charge of intelligence, often know little about the outside world. Even the renowned Dragon Gate ranking. He said, ranking 12th on the Dragon Gate ranking, Infinite Heavenly Wolf Red Shadow, that's him. As a top strongman who's near the front of the rankings, it's natural and reasonable for him to break through the formation. The young man was recounting the past achievements of Infinite Heavenly Wolf Red Shadow. The position he occupied when he first entered the rankings. How he rose swiftly later on. Not long ago, Lord Red Shadow was ranked 19th, falling behind One Punch Martial Madness. But now, since One Punch Martial Madness has been off the list for a lack of recent public achievements, Infinite Heavenly Wolf has made remarkable progress. He is now, it seems, not far from the legendary realm. Sanghun. The title of One Punch Martial Madness sounded familiar. Oh, it seemed to be the title of Elder Yuta. That was the illustrious name Elder Yuta earned when he was at the 3rd Order peak or 4th Order. Chapter 412. I'm just the most ordinary one in our team. The Dragon Gate ranking frequently changes. If a ranked powerhouse doesn't have new public combat achievements after a certain period, their title will vanish from the list. This is said to be done to intensify the competition on the Dragon Gate ranking, to inspire newcomers to strive and fight hard. If the distinguished names on the list remained unchanged for a month, how would newcomers ever conceive the idea of toppling those ranked above them? The giant spirit god Lu Lu fell off the ranking even earlier. After all, Lu Lu's position on the Dragon Gate ranking wasn't that high to begin with. However, the venerable name of Totem Arrow God 17 still hangs high on the Dragon Gate ranking. 17 has many combat achievements and, after the merger with Langxing, even had several outstanding battles that made their fame. Duo Lai, who once briefly tested the waters and climbed into the top 10 of the Dragon Gate ranking, has long since had their name concealed. Mu Yuan speculates that this isn't because the time limit was reached, but because the One-Handed Chamber of Commerce received news of Duo Lai entering the legendary realm and thereupon concealed their name. However, the One-Handed Chamber of Commerce has never publicly stated the rule on how long a period of inactivity in public combat achievements must pass before a ranked individual's title is hidden. Loyal readers of the One-Handed Commerce news speculate that the duration of the time limit is related to a contender's rank. The higher the rank, the longer the duration they can retain it. This theory quickly lost traction. Yuta, who once ranked in the teens, stayed on the list for almost half a year without new achievements. Lu Lu, who was once in the 40s, managed to stay on the list for several months without new achievements. The duration seemed roughly the same. This kind of situation is not uncommon. It's likely done to mix truths and falsehoods to conceal certain information details. After all, the Dragon Gate ranking is completely public, and anyone can access this information. Mu Yuan guessed. Just like when Duo Lai disappeared from the Dragon Gate ranking, outsiders couldn't know if it was because Duo Lai had entered the legendary or simply hadn't had new achievements for too long, leading to their ranking being concealed. The information on the Dragon Gate ranking is also not detailed. It only includes the past combat achievements of those ranked. The rank, skills, and artistic conception realms of the contenders, among other details, are not described. Some of them even have their territories represented as on the list, like 17. Mu Yuan doesn't believe the One-Handed Chamber of Commerce is unaware of 17's identity. At least 6 or 7 people in Chilling City know 17's origins, so the news couldn't have been concealed. But to the vast majority of professionals in Chilling City, 17 is a strong figure shrouded in mystery, of unknown origin, who hasn't publicly revealed their identity, thus they. On the Dragon Gate ranking, Lord Shepherd, whose own division generals have been ranked, makes guesses based on his own situation. If there were more ranked powerhouses, this guess could be more accurate, but there's no need for that. Many lords have a few hidden aces up their sleeves. Which lord doesn't keep something hidden? When the report from Sanghun and a few others in Tian City came via the Spirit Seed, Mu Yuan, who listened to these live broadcasts, was as if he himself had flown to Tian City. Which, of course, was impossible. The spoken word is ultimately unclear, and Sanghun's level of literacy left much to be desired. Furthermore, having never tried before, I didn't realize it, but now I find that the psychic link is somewhat taxing across great distances, with a slight delay. This issue might gradually improve as more Tianyuan troops are stationed in Lake Haven Academy over time. At this moment, inside Lake Haven Academy, at the training field, the infinite heavenly wolf, Red Shadow, broke through the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation. This was both a demonstration and a proclamation. Red Shadow was an instructor at Lake Haven Academy, which showcased the school's profound teaching strength. After all, a top-ranked powerhouse like this, currently at number 12 and potentially advancing to the top 10, is even rarer than those in the legendary realm, much rarer. Such a powerhouse, once they break through, will inevitably become a force in the legendary Earth realm, with a much smoother road ahead than ordinary legends and the hope of reaching the Soul realm. After the demonstration, the instructor's recruitment assessment was about to begin. At that moment, the staff added, if any applicant fails to last 60 seconds but shows unique methods, the Academy will consider them for recruitment. Likewise, if someone can endure for 60 seconds, 120 seconds, 300 seconds, and possesses special methods, our Academy will offer even more generous terms to hire them. As the voice faded, the recruitment assessment officially began. Applicants proceeded to test in the order they had registered. Those ranked later didn't have to hurry, the entire assessment process wasn't complicated and might finish in less than half a day. Just me? I've been eager to try this out. A strong figure holding a large saber stepped forward. Perhaps seeing how effortlessly the infinite heavenly wolf, Red Shadow, cut through the illusionary killing formation, he appeared completely confident. He entered the formation and signaled that he was ready. The entire Water Dragon's Lament formation then buzzed into activity. At the same time, numbers fashioned from countless water flows appeared above the formation, starting the timer. 1. Boom! The water dragon immediately roared to life, bursting forth with a powerful presence. One water dragon opened its mouth, and a barrage of large water cannonballs shot forth, a skill known as water cannon volley. Another water dragon swung its tail, sending arcs of pale blue water blades slicing down in a fan-shaped pattern, a skill called water moon slash. And yet another water dragon dove from the sky, bringing along a dazzlingly heavy surge of water. A high-tier skill, Dragon God Dive. Most importantly, the attacks within the Water Dragon's Lament formation were a mix of real and fake, illusion and reality. If the challenger couldn't distinguish correctly, by exerting their power on illusions, they would be swiftly defeated. Even if they could differentiate, taking too long to decide would leave them vulnerable, causing them to panic and falter. The challenger wielding the big saber was in such a situation. As the number of water dragons increased, his expression grew tenser and his eyes swept back and forth, fixing his gaze on each water dragon. Despite his efforts, he couldn't discern the real from the illusion solely based on intuition and first impressions. Before long, the saber warrior admitted defeat. He was teleported out of the arena, his injuries rapidly healing under the effects of the miracle building. By then, the clock had stopped at 39.3 seconds. This was still the early stage of the formation, where the number of water dragons was not high, meant as a warm-up, familiarization phase for challengers. You see, it might seem like this fellow only fell short by 20 seconds, but in reality, he's still 2/3 short of the journey, someone remarked. However, this fellow's tactics were somewhat flawed, too. The correct approach should have been to take advantage of the initial warm-up phase to familiarize himself with as many water dragons as possible. After that, one can make the most intuitive and accurate judgments when entering the formal phase. Of course, like Lord Red Shadow's approach of directly slashing through the water dragons, penetrating the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation, it would trigger the full force of the entire array right from the start. So even if one has confidence in their own strength, it's suggested to take it easy at first. The young man offered his commentary. It was clear that he was very familiar with both the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation and the assessment process. Sang-hun whispered, "Buddy, is it all right to share all this?" He always had the illusion of being cluelessly circled around the key points before a test, which made Sang-hun, who was still a pure green hand, feel quite ashamed. Ashamed as he may be, Sang-hun knew what was useful to listen to and to utilize. The young man tilted his head up slightly, no harm done. He then added in a lower voice, "This thing isn't really a secret, there's no wall without chinks. The Academy does this because they want to recruit clever warriors, not just powerful ones. Besides, even knowing this tactic, whether one can execute it during the assessment still depends on the challenger's own abilities. This is a comprehensive test of strength, experience, tactics, analytical skills, judgment, and decisiveness. But brother, you look like a bright talent, I'm sure you'll make it through, I trust my eyes." Sang-hun suddenly understood. After all, the college was looking to recruit officers, not just strong warriors. Though generally, those who can fight are not far behind in other aspects. He could also tell that the approach to challenging the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation, whether skillful or brute force, could lead to entirely different outcomes. Following the saber-wielding strongman, several more warriors took the stage. Among them, the strongest only lasted for 51 seconds. This warrior utilized tactics appropriately, pushing his capabilities to the limit, but ultimately, his strength was too weak, and he was overwhelmed by the diving water dragons with just 2 strikes. Several consecutive challengers failed to meet the minimum recruitment standards of Lake Haven Academy, and the strong warriors who came to apply from various places were all somewhat disheartened. Something wasn't right. It seemed a tad difficult. It couldn't be that out of the dozens present, not a single one would pass, could it? I heard the earlier assessments weren't this hard, but too many strong warriors came to apply for Lake Haven Academy. Someone spoke up, with only so many officer positions, if the number of applicants increases, the difficulty of the assessments naturally goes up too. Had we come a month earlier, we might have had a shot at a third-order officer spot. Now? It's tough. Although quite a few third and fourth-order strongmen were losing heart, having come all this way, how could they leave crestfallen without even trying? At least they had to try. Without trying, they wouldn't know how devastatingly they'd fail. Some failed challengers squatted in the corner drawing circles, pondering which college to apply to next. Why not go to a junior college and apply for an ordinary instructor spot? At that moment, a young man in a golden feathered robe adorned with 6 spinning golden wheels boldly stepped forward. It's General Jinlun from Lingfeng City. A person from Lord Lingfeng. It's said that General Jinlun is a hidden profession, and his rank among the 3-star excellence level is at the top tier, no less formidable than the Bone Dragon or Flame Demon, those extremely rare excellence 3-star ranks. This General Jinlun had quite the reputation. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and true to his name, his 6 golden wheels spun in defense and attack, navigating with ease within the Water Dragon's Lament formation. It was only later, when the formation continuously intensified, that General Jinlun finally stepped down, defeated. Time, 121 seconds. Qualified for second-order officer treatment. While there was no real sense of difference between second and third order for most, the gap between 39, 51, and 121 seconds was extremely telling. The audience inhaled sharply, and for a moment, the interior of the miracle building seemed to warm up by several degrees. Subsequently, following 10 or 20 more applicants, results weren't all that great, with only one person receiving third-order officer treatment. Soon. According to the display screen in the distance, it was Sanghun's turn to step up. Sanghun was eager to give it a try. He looked at the young man beside him. "Brother, haven't you had your turn yet?" He remembered the time they registered was quite late, and any later it would have had to wait until next week. The young man gave a faint smile as if he had been waiting for Sanghun to ask just so he could nonchalantly say, "Oh, I passed through it a while ago. I am now a second-class instructor, I obviously can't join in on the fun up there." The legendary second-class strongman. Impressive, impressive. Sanghun clasped his fists, expressing his admiration, then strode towards the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation in the distance. He stepped into the formation. Inside and outside the formation, it truly was a world of difference. From outside, without any pressure and with a clear perspective, he could easily distinguish the real from the fake water dragons. The illusions were not particularly clever and far inferior to Hong Yi's illusion technique. After all, if they were too clever, they wouldn't serve well in tempering and obstacle clearing. However, upon entering the formation, with the mist and the water dragons flying around, it did indeed become a bit more difficult to distinguish. Slightly tough, slightly tough. Sanghun effortlessly dodged by tilting his body to the side and smashed a diving water dragon with a sweep of his ghost's claw. He was very much at ease, both dodging with perfect timing and never expending an ounce of extra energy. After all, Sanghun was a strongman who had sparred with Bone 2, Bone 3, Big Brother Rakshasa, Yuta, and even Boss Dead Bone. The one thing Yuan City never lacked was sparring partners. At least for a fourth-order strongman like Sanghun, there was definitely no shortage. His combat experience was incredibly rich. With constant exposure and the assistance of his life-sharing skills, Sanghun's technique and mental awareness were also top-notch. He lasted a full 153 seconds before he barely succumbed to defeat. This was even with his life-sharing skills having little room to play within the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation. In the distance, the internal staff member, the second-class instructor, a young man from some level 6 territory, was slightly surprised, but not too surprised. After all, he had long discerned that Sanghun was a strongman. To have received the treatment of a second-class instructor, he truly was worthy of being the man Yuan acknowledged. Let's reintroduce ourselves. I am Yuan, a second-class instructor at Lake Haven Academy, in charge of the spell curriculum. From now on, we are colleagues. A pleasure to meet you. I am the newly promoted second-class instructor Sanghun. Let's go have a drink later, I'm buying. I know a great iced drink shop here in the academy. Really? Can I invite a few more people? After all, I didn't come here alone. Yuan was a bit surprised by this. Lake Haven Academy's recruitment standards were very high, and not just anyone could apply. Normally, it was considered impressive for a single individual from an ordinary territory to apply here. It seemed Sanghun was leading the team. The others were probably just following along for the experience. However, given Sanghun's exceptional strength and previously unheralded reputation, it was not impossible that other strongmen from his territory might have snagged third-class instructor positions. How many of you are there? Indeed. Sanghun pointed towards the distance, where there was a girl who looked quiet and demure, holding an ordinary longsword, walking toward the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation. No matter how you looked at her, the girl was very ordinary. So ordinary that in this training field full of strong persons, she was almost a novelty. This is our team leader, Miss Irene. Sanghun then pointed to a young man who was carefully tending to his bow and arrows in the distance. This is my brother, Zhou Yi. Sanghun scanned left and right, finally spotting someone in the corner. This is our eldest sister, Boss Hong Yi. 4 people in total. The young man Yuan nodded slightly but suddenly felt something was off as he continued. Sanghun, who had already secured the treatment of a second-class instructor and shown remarkable strength and combat experience, seemed to occupy a somewhat junior position in this team. Something was definitely amiss here. Chapter 413, All from Tianyuan. Yuan still found it hard to believe. The credibility of Sanghun as a second-tier instructor was even higher than his own. Such a strong person was the most ordinary in the team? Was that reasonable? It must be a joke. Yuan was skeptical, trusting more in his own eyes, his own judgment. Just like at the beginning, when he first laid eyes on Sanghun and felt certain he was an extraordinary powerhouse. Now, upon closer observation, he noticed that Sanghun's brother named Zhou Yi also seemed quite remarkable. However, this lady named Irene didn't strike him as extraordinary no matter how he observed her. She seemed utterly average and lacked the aura of a strong person. The person in the distance, referred to as Hong Yi, even appeared utterly despondent. Could those be strong people? He didn't believe it but didn't show his disbelief. There was no need to say anything, after all, who was strong and who was weak would soon become clear. Irene took a deep breath and walked forward step by step, data streams flickering in her pupils, flashing by. This was her first battle in a public setting. In Tianyuan City, she was a civil officer, responsible for managing the library's book collection and some simple teaching tasks, such as literacy classes at night school. Irene also managed the orphanage in Tianyuan City. Orphans who were young and had no elders to care for them would be placed in the orphanage. The first orphanage in the Tianyuan territory was established and managed by Irene. Irene's strength wasn't prominent, although she had some renown in Tianyuan City, she was not in the combat sequence. Irene had evolved to the epic tier, but her awakened epic talent was an auxiliary ability that did not directly enhance combat power. However, this didn't mean Irene couldn't fight. In some ways, she was quite skilled at it. At the very least, her combat abilities were far superior to Daisy's. From the start of the recruitment assessment, data streams like those in Irene's pupils would occasionally flash, her eyes were fixated on the strong participants taking the stage, never shifting away. Eye of memory. Description: Irene possesses strong memory and observational skills. When this talent is actively activated, Irene's memory, observation, and analysis abilities will be greatly enhanced. Moreover, she can record everything she sees, including every detail of techniques, in the form of a memory palace. Any technique Irene saw once could be completely recorded by her. However, this was limited to theoretical recording. She understood the technique, the intricacies, the key points, but that didn't mean she could use it. This is when the mind understands, but the body cannot follow. Irene's physical talent was not bad, she could master some techniques after practicing them 3 or 4 times on her own. Her combat skills had already reached the peak. After observing Tianyuan powerhouses training and sparring daily, her realm of intentions level had reached half a step into the imagery realm. But that was all. Many advanced and even special skills, even if she could record them completely and understood the principles, were beyond her capability to wield. She didn't meet the requirements to use them. All she understood was theory. Irene was very clear about her strengths and weaknesses. She owned hundreds of skills, yet she hardly had any truly powerful ones. In the blink of an eye, Irene stepped into the formation. The water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation activated again, and numerous water dragons roared into existence. There were no terrifying 10+ meter long ghost's claws. There was no powerful evil specter force. She couldn't raise a violent gust of yin wind and dark mist with a wave of her hand. Compared to the imposing Sanghun who appeared just before, Irene looked genteel, frail as if she might be torn apart by the water dragons at any moment. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Irene kept dodging, like a small boat amidst giant waves. 40 seconds. Irene continued to dodge, seemingly close to disaster, but actually not a single drop touched her. 60 seconds. Irene thrust out with her sword, the tip stirring up waves of sharpness, shredding the water dragon attacking from the side. Her presence was still not strong. But at that moment, the onlookers finally realized in a daze, unknowingly, this girl had reached the qualifying standards and could claim the benefits of a third-tier instructor. What's going on? She clearly looks so weak, not strong at all. Indeed, as I watched, I started to think even I could do it. If they hadn't personally passed through the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation and knew how terrifying it was, they might indeed have the illusion that they could do it themselves. How could they have such an illusion? Terrifying. On the field, Irene was still holding on, appearing extremely strained, but in reality, it was anything but easy for her. Indeed, Irene could hardly be described as at ease. Her strength was limited, barely stronger than an ordinary fourth-order peak, and she had no margin for error, as any fourth-order water dragon posed a lethal threat to her. It was like she was walking on a tightrope. Risky and dangerous, but she never faltered. She kept going, and soon the time reached 153 seconds, equaling and surpassing Sang Hun. This was the best record of today's assessment. Backstage, several academy heads were watching. They were the deans of various departments within Lake Haven Academy. Either they were legendary lords, or they were powerhouses from top territories. One of them was the confidant of the city lord of Tian City. These strong individuals would not always stay in Lake Haven City. However, with the war over and coinciding with the comprehensive recruitment of Lake Haven Academy and Great Lake Academy, these legendary realm beings gradually returned, some even taking on the role of examiners. During this period, the number of legendary realm beings in Lake Haven City far exceeded the usual. Those on the outside found it unbelievable, but the legendary realm powerhouses inside had observed for a while and understood. This person is quite formidable, one of them commented. Indeed, the power she possesses is not strong, but her skills have reached the peak, and her observational power is surprisingly strong. If it weren't for the fact that the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation has no discernible pattern, I would have thought she'd already figured it out, another added. Such observational and analytical abilities are exactly what a top-tier teacher needs. We need this kind of talent, a third chimed in. Perhaps, we could make an exception and offer her the treatment of a first-class instructor, suggested another. A first-class instructor, that's not quite right. After all, the girl's own strength is still lacking, and bestowing a first-class title without merit might invite criticism. Most importantly, our academy only has 3 first-class positions left, someone countered. Let's discuss it in a meeting later. I think she's worth it. Being able to fight and knowing how to fight are not the same thing. We need the latter, said one confidently. By the way, whose division general is this person? She doesn't seem to have any reputation. Not one bit. She couldn't be a new powerhouse recently emerged from some top-level lord's domain, could she? Speculated another. It would be hard for a division general from an ordinary lord's house not to have a reputation. After all, the development and expansion of a territory is forged by these mainstay division generals, one sword and one spear at a time. Only top-level lords have the means to hide people. The principals were not aware, as they usually didn't concern themselves with these matters. However, after one of them ordered an investigation, a staff member quickly brought the relevant information. A legendary realm expert took a look and immediately hummed in surprise. What's going on? Spill the details, Chen, demanded one principal. The middle-aged legendary named Chen smiled and said, this young lady is named Irene, and like Sang Hun, the previous applicant, she comes from the same territory. Oh! Principal Wang voiced a slight surprise. Chen continued, however, what shocks me is not just this little fact. Chen made this claim but did not elaborate. Principal Wang immediately became angry, grabbed the information to take a look, and also hummed in surprise, so it's from that territory, no wonder Sang Hun and Irene had no prior reputation. This makes sense now. How does it make sense, you two old foxes? Another principal demanded. Another principal couldn't hold back and snatched the information for a quick glance, also uttering a hum in realization. Unlike you two, I'll come right out and say it, both of these people are from the Tianyuan territory, they are division generals of the Tianyuan family. He announced to the remaining people. The two principals suddenly understood, but not completely. They were not surprised that the Tianyuan territory had such powerhouses. The name Tianyuan was familiar to them, as Lake Haven Academy had once invited Tianyuan powerhouses to become instructors or to cultivate here. But why would these two being from the Tianyuan territory with no notable reputation make sense? Some at the legendary realm wondered. But there were those who were well informed, and one said, a few months back when our Langsing merged into the Eternal World, Tianyuan territory faced some mishaps and was moved to a remote area, rumored to be on some island. There were even rumors of Tianyuan falling. Now that Tianyuan territory is situated on an island, cut off from the outside world for some time, no matter how formidable the Tianyuan powerhouses are and how much territory they have claimed for their land, few are aware of it, naturally their reputations are not widespread, he explained. Unlike in their Lake Haven City region, where news about the smallest occurrences can spread across dozens of cities overnight. The legendary realm holder of the document hummed yet again, the strong applicants for the positions in Lake Haven Academy are not only Sanghun and Irene. There are also, two others from Tianyuan City. Look, the third applicant is about to take the stage. It can't be that this one is also exceptionally talented, someone said. Irene, gasping for breath, was kicked out of the formation and quickly recovered. Her challenge time froze at 203 seconds, significantly surpassing Sanghun. No sooner had her assessment ended than there were bursts of exclamations and gasps around her. She even heard someone evaluating her as terrifyingly powerful. Irene was not proud. She had long realized that the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation was not solely a test of combat ability. Sanghun's killer moves could not take full effect in such an assessment. Her own abilities, however, were particularly adept at dealing with such tests. But if it were a real fight, one-on-one, she undoubtedly wouldn't stand a chance against Sanghun. Irene was clear about this, her strength was weak, her energy scanty, and she lacked endurance and the ability to withstand hits. If she were to fight Sanghun, connected by a shared fate, a simple self-inflicted wound or two from Sanghun would inevitably bring her downfall. She had no means of countering the shared fate. Nevertheless, Irene was clear about her mission. The Lord did not need her to be able to fight, what he wanted was for her, during her time as an instructor, to soak up as much of Lake Haven Academy's public information as possible, recording all of its curriculum, knowledge, and teaching processes. This was the true meaning of her venture out to learn. Irene stepped down. Zhou Yi, who had already adjusted his vitality to the peak, took big steps forward. His body shimmered with faint starlight. His eyes were sharp, he held a treasured bow in his hand, and his presence was extraordinary. It was clear at a glance that he was a powerhouse. His appearance was many times more impressive than Irene's. This one seems to be a heavyweight powerhouse as well, observed an onlooker. What's going on today? Why are all the heavyweights taking the stage last? Wasn't it supposed to be sorted by the order of registration? Another inquired. Just because you look the part doesn't mean you're strong. Didn't the young lady just prove that point? Earlier, many who seemed mighty fell quickly, unable to sustain themselves for long, a voice reasoned. I always feel like you are insulting me, but I have no evidence. Of course not. Zhou Yi quickly entered the formation and proved to everyone that his strength was by no means inferior to his appearance and, in fact, was even greater. As an archer profession, archers do have some disadvantages in the water dragon formation. No matter how accurate the arrows are, can they really shatter the huge and numerous water dragons? Zhou Yi said they could. Ripples appeared around him, and arrows glimmering with starlight emerged from the ripples, appearing in succession on his drawn bowstring. With one arrow shot, it was like a cannon. Boom! 9 arrows combined into one, and a dazzling pillar of starlight penetrated the heavens and the earth, forcefully shattering the numerous water dragons. Zhou Yi's fingers turned into afterimages as he shot one arrow after another in rapid succession. It was as if he didn't care about the energy consumption at all. Indeed, he didn't care much. His energy reserves far exceeded Irene's, and the consumption during output was partly taken by the 10,000 arrows treasure, while the starlight falling from the high heavens took another part. This made Zhou Yi seem like an unlimited artillery. The water dragons from every direction barely emerged before being blown apart by the arrow of stars. However, Zhou Yi's forceful breaking of the formation also led the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation to unleash its full firepower, and the number of huge water dragons flying out, several times more than before, put a tremendous pressure on him. In the end, Zhou Yi still failed. After all, the time he had spent developing was too short, the reserves of the 10,000 arrows treasure were not enough, and his mastery of the chasing star's power was not deep enough. He had to change tactics and held on until the 300th second, the upper limit of the entire assessment. The formation closed. Zhou Yi couldn't help but look back regretfully as he walked out. My cultivation is still far from enough. Spectators in the distance. Bro, big bro. You're the powerhouse who held on until the maximum time limit of the assessment without falling. If your accomplishment isn't enough, then what about theirs? Is this what being a true strong one means? I always feel the gap between 4th order peak and 4th order peak is much bigger than the gap between humans and dogs. Yuan widened his eyes. Is he also from your territory, your brother? His combat power is too outrageous. Definitely the caliber of the top ranks of the Dragon Gate ranking. Sanghun said proudly, that's right. He paused and then said, but Zhou Yi's combat power isn't that outrageous. I can fight him on equal terms, okay, more like 60-40, 30-70, 30-70 is definitely there. Moreover, Zhou Yi can't beat Rakshasa, Hong Yi, Sario, Bone 2, Bone 3, Bone 4, and so on. Where's the outrageousness in his combat power? Anyone who thinks it's outrageous should really check if they've been serious about their cultivation. It is the epic military kind, Arrow of Polar Star. Backstage, Adine spoke up, this Tian Yuan really has great fortune and capabilities. Reportedly, a few months ago, he already had several epic strong under his command. Within a few months, he has achieved what many lords couldn't in over a decade. Another from the legendary realm spoke, not just the Arrow of Polar Star, but it seems stronger than the ordinary one. Some time ago, I had a combat drill with a lord of the Yongxing, and his 4th order peak Arrow of Polar Star was clearly not as strong as this Zhou Yi. This is personal discrepancy. And a substantial one at that. After all, the Yongxing Empire has a complete cultivation scheme for the Arrow of Polar Star, perfectly tapping into its potential. Others can't. That Zhou Yi is still stronger than Yongxing's Arrow of Polar Star under these circumstances shows that he is truly remarkable. If only we had a few more strong ones like Zhou Yi, I would dare to tease Yongxing Empire by saying that the true lineage of the Polar Star is now in Taishan. But then again, it's fortunate that Zhou Yi couldn't break the formation. Thinking this way feels somewhat unethical, but according to the rules, one who breaks it enjoys the special instructor treatment, and we no longer have any special instructor spots available. As an archer, Zhou Yi was at a disadvantage, or else, he might really have been able to break through the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation. A few from the legendary realm commented. Meanwhile, Hong Yi, who had just woken up from a nap and was yawning, floated towards the great formation. Chapter 414, The Name Hong Yi. Hong Yi could refine her soul body just like Rakshasa and Sanghun to make it indistinguishable from a real person. But she was too lazy to do it. Her creed was to float if she could avoid walking, to sit if she could avoid standing, and to crawl into a grave if such an option existed. Naturally, she floated everywhere she went. The characteristics of ghost-type troops were fully displayed on her. However, this was not particularly unusual. Although the strong among those present were mostly human race soldiers and human ranks, there were a few non-human troops as well. Fanged berserkers, flame demon sheep, fear knights, and so on. Their appearances were much more eye-catching than Hong Yi's. People paid more attention to Hong Yi because they thought, 3 top powerhouses have already appeared in a row, and each one is stronger than the last. Could it be that this red-dressed spirit is actually the real final boss? How could that be possible? They think this is a novel or something. The last formidable person called Zhou Yi had the standard to be in the top ranks of the Dragon Gate ranking, not far behind the famously powerful infinite heavenly wolf, Red Shadow. The special instructor, Red Shadow, was naturally present as well. He came to demonstrate, representing the academy in promotion, and naturally couldn't just leave. Even though he really wanted to leave, he didn't want to waste time here. He would rather spend this time training and battling. Unexpectedly, not all the time today was a waste. He had seen strong characters. Irene and Sanghun were one thing, but Zhou Yi's performance truly caught his eye. Zhou Yi had failed to break through the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation. However, those who knew. The reason Red Shadow could break through this killing formation so easily was also because he had experienced the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation many times. He was very familiar with it, making it naturally not difficult to break through. If Zhou Yi was familiar with this formation, he could break it too. He might just spend a little more time than him. In Red Shadow's mind, Zhou Yi's raw strength, even if not as good as his own, was also of the same order of magnitude. He began to have the urge to have a sparring fight. Finding a strong character to battle whose strength didn't differ too much was quite difficult. To exchange moves and communicate with an unfamiliar strong character was even more beneficial for self-improvement. The more Red Shadow thought about it, the itchier his heart felt, but the hiring assessment had not yet ended, so he couldn't leave. Red Shadow, you've waited for half a day already, a little longer won't hurt. At most, another half hour and the assessment will end, endure. Just endure another half hour, then you can be completely thrilled. As he muttered to himself, his gaze also caught sight of the red-dressed ghost spirit floating into the formation from afar. This female ghost looked like she hadn't woken up fully. How could she even challenge the trial? Red Shadow thought it impossible. Surely, only those like him and Zhou Yi were true powerhouses. Hong Yi's eyes were bleary with sleep. She was awake, but not completely. However, this wasn't a problem. She had long been accustomed to this state. She could even say that in this half-asleep, half-awake state, she could wield illusion techniques even more easily. I'm ready. Let's get started. Yuan. Finish it early, and go back early. Hong Yi's bleary eyes scanned her surroundings, taking in each and every water dragon into her sight. Their shapes, lights, shadows, movements, they all became clear in her mind rapidly. How should I fight? Let's go with whatever's fastest. Eye of Reincarnation isn't suited for use, and it's troublesome. For a mere illusionary killing formation, it's unnecessary to go so far. She pondered and observed. She didn't like thinking, but if thinking could save her some effort and time, she didn't mind doing a bit more of it. First like this, then like that, and then do it this way. Yep, the plan is solid. Within a few seconds of stepping into the Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation, Hong Yi quickly simulated a set of tactics using illusion techniques and felt it was feasible. At that moment, the grand formation began to buzz into action. The originally harmless-looking water dragons became wild and fierce, stirring up monstrous momentum and waves. Countless water dragons surged and roared within the formation, making trialists feel as though they had been plunged into a turbulent sea in the blink of an eye. In Hong Yi's eyes, it was all just noise. Mere shadows and illusions. Break. She breathed out lightly, and an invisible breeze fluttered out. The breeze was formless, yet it seemed to be made of thousands of strands of sharpness, sweeping across the field in an instant. The surrounding 99 majestic water dragons froze instantly. 87 of the water dragons shattered like bubble shadows, leaving only 12 with the sound of water flow still streaming on them. However, this breach seemed to enrage the whole formation. The Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation instantly went into full power, even overloading. Mist filled the air. From the dome above, huge amounts of water cascaded down like waterfalls. Hundreds to thousands of raging water dragons burst out from every part of the formation, bearing their claws, gathering water to strike. She's breaking the formation too. There was an exclamation from the audience outside the arena. Around them, some spectators, still immersed in the previous battle, turned their gaze to the commotion upon hearing the shouts, and the exclamations then followed in waves, like a symphony orchestration. This applicant named Hong Yi was actually breaking the formation. The entire Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation had been roused to anger. Being able to do this at least meant that this female ghost possessed a power exceeding that of the vast majority of strong characters on scene. Red Shadow, who was still murmuring to himself, also turned to look, his pupils instantly constricting. On the field, water dragons roared, like a meteor shower falling toward the slender red figure in the middle. But Hong Yi was faster. As the second break sounded forth, the murmuring chant swept inside and out of the arena like torrential waves, and another 90% of the newly emerged water dragons dissipated like bubble shadows. Immediately following, the vague shadows of buildings, shops, and pedestrians spread out from Hong Yi as the center, overlapping with the entire Water Dragon's Lament illusionary killing formation. Within the fierce torrential water domain, a bustling, noisy city scene was forcibly squeezed in. However, This bustling marketplace was only what met the eye at first glance. Upon closer scrutiny, one would quickly discover the walls of buildings mottled with patches, the figures of passers-by blurry, and a chilling aura of specters pervading the air. Before the onlookers had time to examine closely, the scenery of the marketplace that overlapped with the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation began to twist. A humming sound echoed incessantly. The water dragons and buildings had already become indistinct. Some building doors swung wide open like the gaping mouth of a giant beast, swallowing several water dragons as if they were tiny mudfish. Ghostly figures grinned like butchers, unsheathing their knives to pin the water dragon to the wall, flaying and deboning them. There were ghostly shadows, some fake, some real. What on earth is happening inside? Someone asked. Before anyone could answer, the overlapping shadows of the buildings and the water dragons had all vanished, leaving behind only a graceful silhouette clad in red, who waved her hand to dispel the mist around her and floated out. At this moment, the countdown timer hanging above the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation froze. It froze at 9.62 seconds. 9 seconds. Less than 10. Killed through the entire water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation? There were no exclamations, no curses, all that was present outside the formation was silence. Silence was the theme of the day. Their reflexes hadn't even caught up yet. After a long pause. What happened? A passing onlooker looked around bewildered. He had just returned from the bathroom and everyone seemed petrified in place. He hadn't been gone that long. Actually, I don't know what happened either. Another bystander stared at the distant formation, still confused. He just saw the red-clad powerhouse float up, take action, and breach the grand formation. It all happened so fast, he barely understood what had occurred. The formation simply shattered. 9.62 seconds, what level is that? How long did it take Lord Infinite Heavenly Wolf to break the formation? Was it 17 seconds or 18? Twice as fast as Red Shadow? Hiss! How can she be that fast? Many people snapped back to their senses, and at this point, exclamations and curses finally began to rise in a chorus. It seemed they had witnessed something incredible. From then on, they could boast to their friends over dinner, I witnessed the rise of a super lord. Red Shadow is ranked 12th on the Dragon Gate ranking. This red-clad figure, countless times more ferocious than Red Shadow, what rank should she hold on the Dragon Gate ranking? Top 10? Top 5? Top 3 or? At this thought, people couldn't help but inhale sharply. Most of those present had seen the Dragon Gate ranking, but chances to witness the top-ranking powerhouses were few and far between. The opportunity to see the battle for the ranking with one's own eyes was even rarer. Today, they had seen it. In the distance, a second-rank instructor Yuan stared at Hong Yi and then at Sang Hun. His throat moved for a long time but he couldn't utter a word. Sang Hun, brother, you really didn't exaggerate at all. No, wait, Sang Hun, brother, aren't you being too modest? Hold on a second. Instructor Yuan keenly spotted a discrepancy. You said you come from a small town? That's not reasonable. No small territory has such an exaggerated lineup. Hong Yi, Zhou Yi, Sang Hun, including Irene, they all have the qualifications to be on the Dragon Gate ranking. Even if Sang Hun and Irene might rank on the lower end of the Dragon Gate ranking, it's still the Dragon Gate ranking. 4 dragons of the gate from one city, could that be a small town? A pawn simply cannot produce a true dragon. Sang Hun was very innocently, we really do come from a level 5 small town, and it hasn't been long since our territory was upgraded. Our lord also said that the city is too small, just a small town scale, and it's still expanding. Instructor Yuan fell silent. Perhaps their home did not qualify to be called a city-tier territory. Outside the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation, Hong Yi hovered there, her gaze unfriendly as she stared at the distant examiner responsible for evaluating the examination. Why hasn't this examiner Bai Deng announced the results yet? Even floating like this could be exhausting. Under Hong Yi's judgmental gaze, the examiner finally snapped back to reality and opened his mouth. Miss Hong Yi, given your performance, we will. This examiner was a senior lord. Among the senior lords, he was quite experienced, with a tenure of over 10 years, having reached the 4th order limit great perfection himself, and he also held a significant position at Lake Haven Academy. He was well aware that based on Hong Yi's performance and level, it was completely justified to award her the title of top-rank instructor. That was the stipulation of Lake Haven Academy. However, they no longer had any top-rank instructor positions available. The top-rank instructor positions were very precious. The Academy granted special allowances for them, along with corresponding targets. One had to meet the standards to acquire this treatment. Under normal recruitment, it was impossible to attract such talent. The Academy initially worried they couldn't fill the top-rank instructor positions to receive the special allowances from the higher-ups, so a legendary Realm Academy head personally made a distant trip, heading to the territory of an old friend to invite a Dragon Gate ranking powerhouse. Red Shadow was one of them. Of course, even for powerhouses specially invited by the Academy, they had to pass the assessment to earn the special title, which had to be submitted to the Alliance headquarters for upper-level review. Lake Haven Academy could only approve first-rank instructors on its own. Now, the talent was here, even far surpassing the standards required by the higher-ups, but the positions were gone. What to do? What to do? The examiner felt like a small shrimp, incapable of handling such an important affair. He needed to ask a superior for instructions. However, he had a feeling that if he uttered the word inquire, he might, just might, get knifed by this red-clad lord. The intention to use a knife is not something one can easily conceal. The examiner's back was soaked with sweat. He was just a small fourth-order limit. At that moment, an aged but resonant voice came from the distance. At Lake Haven Academy, we are in desperate need of various talents. With Hong Yi's capabilities, she would naturally enjoy the treatment of a first-class instructor here, and that's not all. The Academy has also decided to float Hong Yi's treatment up by 20% on top of a first-class instructor's package. All of these will be fully provided by our Academy. The Dean spoke. He was one of the few who had been watching from backstage. Just now, they had been astonished, never expecting the Yuan powerhouse who appeared last to be so formidable. Even though the ghost-type powerhouse Hong Yi excelled at illusion technique and had a notably effective way of breaking the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation, benefiting from the suitable environment, her strength was still not to be underestimated. Stronger than Red Shadow. They were all of the legendary realm, and they had the discernment to see this. And precisely because they were legends, with ample experience and a broad perspective, they quickly recovered from their astonishment. They were not without knowledge of hearing about or seeing other fourth-order limit powerhouses, so, their surprise was moderate. They soon began discussing the affair concerning Hong Yi. Lake Haven Academy indeed had no more vacancies for top-tier instructors, but, could they offer her a first-class treatment? Absolutely not. If they dared to offer Hong Yi a first-class treatment today, tomorrow she might take an offer from another academy, bringing along talents like Irene, Sang-hun, and Zhou Yi. Hong Yi and her group came for the job interview, not necessarily to work here. In a few days, this incident would spread throughout Taishan, and Lake Haven Academy would carry the stigma of not valuing talent. That, of course, was unacceptable. But since there were indeed no vacancies, what to do? We'll give it from our side. As the premier city in the Dusk Domain, can't Tian City afford to give one top-tier instructor treatment? We'll report Hong Yi's case as well. If the higher-ups are willing to allocate additional funding, that would be great, but if they can't, we'll provide it ourselves. Not only will we provide, but we'll also increase the stakes. This matter has indeed caught us off guard, but it's also a stroke of fortune. That a powerhouse with infinite potential like Hong Yi has chosen Tian's Academy proves the excellence of our institution. We must not only give, but we must give more, and we must make this known. Do you understand? The other legendary realms naturally understood this reasoning. It was just. We don't have the authority to do that, do we? We must contact the old headmaster. There's no time, this matter needs to be done quickly. Chen would certainly think the same, and if anything goes wrong, I'll take responsibility. The name of the top-tier instructor Hong Yi spread rapidly in Tian City. The procedures were all completed by that afternoon, with staff fully responsible for assisting and running errands throughout. At this, Hong Yi was quite pleased. This academy, not bad. The entry procedures for Zhou Yi, Sang-hun, and others were naturally also completed that afternoon. They quickly joined Lake Haven Academy and began to enjoy the academy's benefits. The classes hadn't started, and they were still undecided about what students they might teach, but they could already access various types of information. Hong Yi also checked some illusion technique cultivation materials. Among them were the valuable experiences of many legendary realm grand illusionists, which were rather precious for Hong Yi. Meanwhile, One after another, prestigious academies were also vigorously carrying out their recruitment. In many places, previously unnoticed dark horse powerhouses were making remarkable entrances. Rankings on the Dragon Gate ranking were changing rapidly, with the competition being unimaginably fierce. Soon, a new edition of the Dragon Gate ranking was published. Chapter 415, Why is it all Yuan on the rankings? Extra! Extra! Hot off the press, the latest Dragon Gate ranking is here. Would you like a copy? On the streets of Panchi City, a newspaper boy held a stack of newspapers, waving and shouting. In no time, the area around the newspaper boy was surrounded by layers of people. During times of peace, the brand new release of the Dragon Gate ranking was big news indeed. In Eternal World, where games and internet were scarce, these business reports became bestsellers. People rushed to buy them, eager to see for themselves. After all, the recent changes in the Dragon Gate ranking had been unimaginably intense. There were instances where warriors ranked in the middle of the list one issue would plummet to the brink of falling off the bottom of the next issue. For elite fighters aspiring to make a name for themselves and their territories by competing in the Dragon Gate ranking, this was a period of intense rivals clashing. It's too competitive. Competitive to an outrageous extent. Do you understand how it feels to be on the cusp of making it onto the Dragon Gate ranking, only to suddenly find even the end of the list out of sight? It's despair. But for the countless onlookers of the Taishan Alliance, this period was spectacular, with divinities battling and powerful warriors emerging. Rising and falling ranks. That's where the fun was. Exciting. Come on, let's see how many strong fighters have dropped off the list this time. But this issue was released a bit too quickly, wasn't it? Didn't they just update the Dragon Gate ranking a week ago? So what if it's fast? I wish they'd update it every day. That's only if there's a change to the rankings, though. Bystanders read the rankings for fun, most of them unaware of the might of those at the fourth order limit of great perfection, nor do they understand what it signifies. To the majority of people, the strong and imposing figures on the ranking seem more like stars from the during Langxing's period. In this era, only the powerful could be stars. And the Dragon Gate ranking was the closest thing regular folks had to a celestial list of stars. There were also many who began to chase after these star-like warriors in Eternal World, rooting for them on the rankings. Entertainment reports even laid out the top 10 most popular fighters on the Dragon Gate ranking. The officials didn't oppose this. After all, the stars being chased were each a prodigy of the Dragon Gate, and descriptions of their combat power on the rankings often included phrases like one person defending a city, solo battling numerous monster bosses, turning the tide, sweeping thousands of enemies, and so on. These were all positive combat achievements that served as a correct guidance. If the Dragon Gate ranking could inspire some young people to embark on the path toward becoming powerful, it would be hitting two birds with one stone. Laymen watched for the excitement, but the experts looked at the details and secrets. Lord, the Dragon Gate issue, choked on it. A black knight handed over a crumpled newspaper, stuttering as he spoke. Zhang Loxing didn't mind. A baby who had only awakened self-awareness 2 months ago would be like this. Not having accidentally torn the newspaper, that was already good progress. He took and unfolded the newspaper, quickly scanning from the top. Beside him was Lord Yushi, who had also come to Panchi City with his division generals for an instructor interview. Yushi also leaned in, reading aloud. The Dragon Gate ranking lists a total of 200 warriors, including lords, heroes, military types, and professionals, from the Taishan Alliance. This ranking is based on the recorded highest achievements of the listed individuals. It does not necessarily represent the peak combat power of those listed. Even if an epic life is endowed with both light of will and domain as a legendary seed, it will not be included without publicly known combat achievements. The ranking of the Dragon Gate is evaluated by professionals and special miracle buildings, and there may be a small margin of error compared to the actual ranking. The final interpretation right of the ranking belongs to the One-Handed Chamber of Commerce. At the same time, the Chamber of Commerce welcomes journalists to provide more detailed information. There has been a significant change in the ranking of the Dragon Gate in this issue, with 74 emerging strong fighters entering the list, 56 of whom are making their debut. Yushi hissed sharply after reading that. Out of the 200 spots on the Dragon Gate ranking, 74 have been squeezed out. This is too intense. Does that mean that more than 120 fighters from the previous issue are likely to fall off the list? No wonder the One-Handed Chamber of Commerce was in such a hurry to release the new ranking. Zhang Loxing was also trembling as he read, "Thank goodness our people aren't on the list, or we'd be swept away. Yu Shi, is it something to be proud of, that we can't make the list?" Zhang Loxing, suddenly feeling sad. Right now, they hadn't managed to train even a single fourth-order leader-level person, and they had no chance of competing for a spot on the Dragon Gate ranking in the next year or two unless they stumbled upon a great opportunity. The two then turned the newspaper to the next page, starting with ranks 101 to 200. The Earth list. That way, they could maintain a sense of anticipation. The current Dragon Gate ranking could be seen as follows: ranks 101 to 200 were 4th-tier title holders, ranks 51 to 100 were 3rd-tier title holders, ranks 21 to 50 were 2nd-tier title holders, ranks 11 to 20 were 1st-tier title holders, the top 10 were 0-tier. Supreme, Invincible Fighters. The 70 or so new entrants were mainly concentrated in this lower half of the list. Number 198 Sword of Billow Li Jian, he's from Lord Bolan's city, isn't he? I remember him making the Dragon Gate ranking 2 issues ago, then quickly getting squeezed out, but now he's surged back. Let me see his achievements. During the Jackal Man tribe's punitive campaign. During the Root of Corruption eradication battle. There are too many achievements to count. Zhang Loxing realized upon reading that the Sword of Billow was desperately contending for a place on the list. After all, the ranking was achievement-oriented, and sometimes it required powerful enough enemies to highlight one's extraordinary combat power. The Dragon Gate ranking doesn't come with substantial rewards, but being listed itself is the greatest reward. For ordinary powerhouses, being listed provides credentials sufficient to hold positions in the vast majority of institutions. They can even apply for legendary loans with low or no interest and seek the right to use special miracle buildings in many official major cities. It's akin to possessing a fruit of prestige. Even prestigious schools like Lake Haven Academy allow Dragon Gate list powerhouses to join their ranks without trials. For lords and territorial powerhouses, being listed also promotes their territories and attracts business investment. There are thousands of lords of Taishan, but why should a major group invest in you? Why should they be optimistic about you? Because I have a Dragon Gate list powerhouse. Lord Bolan seems to be a senior lord, right? Having a division general who can be listed is really impressive. After all, being able to make it onto the Dragon Gate ranking means legend is within reach. The only difference lies in whether it takes 3 years, 2 years, or a year and a half. Damn it, I also want to compete for the ranking, but the gap is too big. Speaking of which, Boss Tian Yuan is really impressive. A few months ago, one of his division generals was already listed, right? Why is there such a huge gap between people? I heard Boss Tian Yuan said he would also dispatch division generals to emerge from seclusion. We haven't seen Tian Yuan powerhouses in the last few issues, there must be some this time, right? Indeed, there should be. Didn't Big Boss Tian Yuan have 2 division generals who got listed before? Could those 2 stage kings return and directly regain their place at the top of the list? Yu Shi said, the competition on the current ranking is much fiercer than a few months ago, but Giant Spirit God and Wu Kuang must have grown stronger too. Perhaps they could directly break into the top 20 or 10. Top 10 is unlikely. Recently there's fierce competition among the academies, and many have specifically invited young powerhouses from top-level lords' families to emerge from seclusion. Haven't you noticed? The current top 10 are all from top-level territories. Each of them is an unbelievable monster. They thought to themselves, their gaze slowly scanning upwards. Many listed here had continuously striven to rank higher, boasting countless battle achievements. Some powerhouses didn't deliberately aspire for the ranking. When these people got listed, it was often due to demonstrating exceptionally formidable prowess during recruitment battles for instructors at various high-level institutions. And because of the high-level institutions' recruitment drives, division generals at the 4th order limit were emerging in droves, like bamboo shoots after rain. Among them, they found 2 Tian Yuan powerhouses. Sure enough, there are people from Tian Yuan Gai, all unfamiliar names, looks like they're newer powerhouses. One of them ranked 134th, wielding holy light power, dressed in a white robe, looking exceedingly sacred. Seems like a holy light master sacrifice? The other, ranked 101st, was a brawny man bare-chested and wielding 2 large hammers, exuding an imposing presence. Both had few publicly known battle achievements, just a singular one, which occurred recently during the instructor selection battle at Panxi City's Advanced Academy. Both had become famous through a single fight. Think about it, Tianyuan Guy wouldn't send out his strongest division generals, but even so, Tianyuan powerhouses still easily get listed. That's Boss Tianyuan for you. Tianyuan already has 2 listed, will there be more ahead? Simultaneously. At the Great War Zone of Longshan Pass, Logistics Base 1. The one-handed Chamber of Commerce also conveyed the news of the Dragon Gate ranking through special channels, promptly printed additional copies, and began selling them on the spot. Lord of Ba Long held a brand new copy of the Dragon Gate ranking, hot off the press. 2 individuals from his territory were listed. One was his strongest epic general, Xian dragon descendant Hogaur, the other was he himself, Lord of Ba Long. After all, he had fought for a long period in the Great War Zone, had many public battle achievements, and it was only natural for him to be listed with his own abilities. Originally, his epic Molten Steel Dragon was also qualified to be listed, but the competition for the Dragon Gate ranking recently had gotten too intense. If we were to go by the standard from 2 months ago, Molten Steel would certainly have been listed. Molten Steel's cultivation time is, after all, a bit short, but in the future, Molten Steel will definitely ascend to the forefront of the Dragon Gate ranking, standing tall above all others. After checking his own ranking, Lord of Ba Long thought of his rival Tianyuan. Of course, he recognized that Tianyuan was a little stronger than himself, a Dragon Series Lord whom he acknowledged. He too was working very hard to catch up. This time, Xian Dragon descendant Hogaur broke into the top 40. Although only the top 40, under normal circumstances it was enough to storm into the top 30 or 20. That was the limit for Xian Dragon descendant. He couldn't compare with the monsters in the top 10. Lord of Ba Long didn't even intend to compare. Many of the monsters in the top ranks of the Dragon Gate list hailed from top-level territories, true big bosses who had been nurtured with great effort and resources. What did he, the mere Lord of Ba Long, have to compare with? Managing to break into the top 40, Lord of Ba Long was already very proud. His only regret was that Lord Wuji made it into the top 20, ranked 17th, quite a bit stronger than his Xian Dragon descendant. Wuji is still formidable, I can't catch up to him. However, Shadow Ghost Claw, the former epic general of Yushan, ranked only 59th this time and didn't even make it into the top 50. Compared to that, my Xian Dragon descendant is still quite invincible. Wuji territory and Yushan territory only had 1 person each on the list. But Tianyuan territory. Lord of Ba Long flipped to the previous page and continued to browse from bottom to top. He soon discovered the 3rd listed Tianyuan powerhouse. Number 96 Shadow Ghost Claw Sanghun. Battle Achievement, performed excellently in Lake Haven Academy's Water Dragon's Lament Illusionary Killing Formation Challenge, earning the title of 2nd-class instructor at Lake Haven Academy. In the image depicted, there was a powerhouse manifesting a gigantic ghost claw with burning black flames, both powerful and majestic. The 3rd Tianyuan powerhouse, truly worthy of my recognition as Tianyuan. However, why isn't there a single dragon-type warrior? Tianyuan is clearly also very keen on dragon-type troops. Ba Long's gaze continued upward, browsing word by word. Before long his gaze stilled once again. Number 88 Sophia of All-Encompassing. This was a human girl holding a long sword, appearing neither ordinary nor distinctive. She had no dragon horns, nor dragon wings, neither majestic nor fierce, her image seemed inferior in Ba Long's eyes. However, the rankings of the one-handed Chamber of Commerce were always fair. The combat achievements of Sophia of All-Encompassing were also witnessed by many, hence, she must be a powerful warrior. 4 people now. On the small Dragon Gate ranking, there were 4 Tianyuan powerhouses. Ba Long felt the pressure. He was very clear that the strongest division general of Tianyuan territory was not among these 4. After all, the Tianyuan guy possessed a frost giant dragon. Lost in thought, Ba Long's mind wandered, yet his gaze continued to scan instinctively. Upon glimpsing a certain 2 characters, Ba Long's entire body jolted, and all his wandering thoughts snapped back into focus. Star Shatter Arrow Zhou Yi. Affiliated territory, Tianyuan. Ranking. Ba Long's pupils shrank suddenly. Number 19. Tianyuan territory had yet another warrior breaking into the top 20. And it was a completely new face. The current rankings had seen significant changes, but the positions in the upper echelons of the Dragon Gate ranking were relatively stable, with a strong warrior rising or falling by a rank or 2 at most. The former number 12, Red Shadow, the Infinite Heavenly Wolf, had dropped to number 13 this time. At How did Red Shadow drop? Wait, the warriors ranked 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th all dropped by one rank too, not because they surpassed Red Shadow. So who was it? Seeming to realize something, Ba Long's gaze quickly swept upward. Soon, he discovered an extremely unfamiliar name among the top 10. Shadow Lord Hong Yi. Combat achievements, shattering illusion with a glance, breaking spells with a thought, using an unimaginable force to breach the water dragon's lament illusionary killing formation in a very short time, achieving an unprecedented fame. An entity climbing to the top 10 based on a single achievement. Ranking, number 6. Note, as Shadow Lord Hong Yi revealed few techniques during this short battle, after comprehensive consideration, this ranks him temporarily at number 6. The One-Handed Chamber of Commerce even specifically provided a note. This was clearly an indication that they believed this Lord Hong Yi was far beyond the standard of number 6. Terrifying indeed. Which powerhouse's emerging star has come forth? Ba Long's gaze slowly moved downward, then suddenly stilled. The name Tian Yuan resonated loudly among many young lords. However, Tian Yuan hadn't shown up for a good part of the year, and the publicly known combat achievements of Tian Yuan were scarce, simply a legend and a secretive genius. For the vast majority of ordinary people from before Langxing, the word Tian Yuan was even more unfamiliar. Tian Yuan? Who is that? Are they more amazing than my brother? Today they saw for themselves. Tian Yuan. Tian Yuan. Tian Yuan again. Did this Dragon Gate ranking stir up a Tian Yuan nest? Last period there wasn't a single one, and now, this time, 6 powerful warriors have been listed? Is this the legendary Tian Yuan? Tian Yuan indeed, remains Tian Yuan. Can I say this was completely within expectations? Primordial Spirit Fan Support Group is recruiting. Tian Yuan territory. Mu Yuan had also received the Dragon Gate ranking, freshly copied over from Panchi City. Excluding Liu Lu, Duo Lai, and Yuta, who had already dropped off the list, in actuality, Tian Yuan City had not 6 but 9 people on the ranking. 17's position had still not diminished. Sophia had left behind a mysterious reputation during the defense of Beijiang City. Lian Yu, too, had made a slight move during a trading journey, instantly building a formidable reputation. It's just that their affiliated territories on the Dragon Gate ranking were unknown.